Okay. This Budget Committee meeting will come to order. Clerk will call the roll.
All right, Council Capone.
Fire.
Here.
Council Dellis Hall.
Here.
Council DeFleury. I have Council Ham.
Here.
I have Council Bain.
Here.
I have Council Mike Casey.
Here.
I have Council McKinney.
Here.
I have Council Napolitano. I have Council Sachetta.
Here.
I have Council Sonny.
Here.
And I have Council Sabelli.
Present.
We have 10 members present. Do we have a quorum?
10 members present. We have a quorum. Please rise, salute the flag.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If we could please just remain standing. We've lost a few folks since the last time we were together. To the Sano family, Mrs. Sano, Moody Sano's wife, has passed away. To the Doyle family, Paula Doyle, her father was a teacher at the Voc, and the father of one of our decorated firefighters, Joseph Quinn, lost his father recently. So if we could just remain standing for a moment of silence for them and their families, I'd appreciate it. Thank you. Okay. The first department in front of us this evening is the fire department.
Make a motion to have the chief in front of us.
Second.
You can have the chief and any other members of the administration who wish to be forward for the presentation. I believe in the books, it's pages 38 through 40. Okay. Are there any questions on page 38? Council Sani.
Thank you. Under the salaries, I'm just curious, is everybody like a 3% raise, 5% raise? Is there any union negotiations still going on, or?
2%.
Okay. Is everything all negotiated as?
Still in the process.
Okay, thank you.
If I may, from the chair, Melissa, clerk just informed me that, I guess, under our rules, the auditor is supposed to be here. Is he on his way, or?
He's in a meeting and should be here shortly.
Okay,
He had a meeting go over. That's why.
okay, very good. Was that Council Mangan? Judge Hania? Okay.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Through you to the chief. Chief, just in the hazmat, hazardous duty pay, it's almost doubled. Could you just explain that?
There was a contractual increase in that line item last year, and that accounts for this increase.
Okay, thank you.
Council McKinnon?
Just a quick question. I know that there was a study done on salaries, or something to that effect. Could you just touch on that? Was this part of that, or?
No, the salary study only did non-union employees.
Okay.
Not union employees.
All right, so this is all negotiated union.
So these are all everything you see under personnel is negotiated union contract issues.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Council Del Solo?
Just two questions here on item telecommunications. It's up to 20,000, and last year was 15.
I requested that increase this year because of the new technology that's available out there. We're unable to take advantage of a lot of it because there's obviously fees associated with mostly airtime. And the reason for this increase was I want to put iPads on all our fire apparatus now, and all of our inspectors will be issued iPads to go along with the new viewpoint inspection software that we're purchasing. So they'll be able to work out in the field.
Correct.
Do everything right out in the field on iPads, issue letters and things like that. So we needed that additional funding to support the airtime for the new equipment.
Okay, the other question was on the training. It's up to 30,000 from 15.
again, that line item has been at 15,000 for the 15 years that I've been chief. And it's just getting, with the training officer, you know, in our staffing now, we've been seeking a lot more training programs that are available out there as we build our program. And it's just, 15,000 just wasn't enough to bring in some of the training that we want to bring in.
Okay, how many firemen do we have from last year to this year? Have we hired new ones?
We hired
Yes.
7, I want to say around, yeah, we're at 103 now, firefighters. We've hired probably, we just hired 7, and I don't think we hired any last year. We hired 10 the year before.
Okay.
They were all, no new hires, they were all replacements.
Replacements? Okay.
And 8 of them were off of a grant
Okay,
that we had on a grant that we've added to our staffing.
we'll take that.
Yeah,
All
we
right,
can use
yeah.
them.
Thank you. Thank you.
Counsel Sani.
Thank you. Under clothing allowance, it 50% more than last year. Can you explain why is that going up?
Again, that's a contractual.
So it jumped up that much? Have we looked out to see other areas to see about pricing come down on
The
that?
clothing allowance is pretty comparable to what other cities are getting.
Okay.
The cost of clothing that a firefighter has to buy, we supply them with their turnout gear, but the clothing that they have to wear, station uniforms, all has to be NFPA certified. And as soon as you put that NFPA certification on there, it increases the cost substantially. You know, if we were to wear fire retardant shirts, just a shirt that I'm wearing is probably up in the $130, $140 range. And they go through a pretty substantial amount of clothing in a year.
Okay. The other question, you mentioned on the salaries and hired new people, you said the grants are no longer, do they have any new grants?
We applied again for another staffing grant this year.
But we haven't got accepted
We
yet?
haven't heard
We
anything.
haven't heard
on
anything.
it.
How many on that staffing?
8.
grant? 8 again?
Yep.
All right, thank you.
Counsel McKinnon.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to the chief. Chief, so are you looking for more than just 8, or are you gonna be looking for a little bit? Are you gonna be looking just for 8?
I'll take as many as I can get.
I know you will. What, in your opinion, as a chief, what would be the proper staffing level for the city of Everett, knowing what you know coming in?
You know, I made it well-known that I'd like to get at least one more company in service, and I've been working with the mayor on that.
So the 8 plus,
It's hard to say. It would depend on what we determine we're gonna put in service.
Okay.
You know, in the short term, I'd like to try to get a rescue in service on a full-time basis, but I haven't fully evaluated what staffing I'd need for that yet.
okay,
I
and
mean, I
the,
have some of the staffing I need, but I may need
You would
more.
need
I haven't evaluated it fully.
and then, let me see, with a substation in place, you would need additional manpower at that point, correct? Or you would be able
If we
to,
had a substation.
if you have coming in with a substation, how many additionals would you need?
Well, it takes 16 firefighters to man a piece of apparatus.
So,
It's 4 firefighters per shift for
Yep.
4 shifts.
so 4 is an adequate number?
4 is a number that we should be at on everything, yeah.
Okay. And then you would need 16 for all 3 shifts?
16 to cover
Cover
4
this,
shifts.
okay.
yeah.
And that would be down, say if we were to have a substation, there was talk of that before, so you would need
Yeah,
an
but
additional
we're looking
16.
3 years down the road, so, you know, again, I've had many discussions with the mayor, and, you know, we are working towards that end.
Thank you very much.
Counsel Mangan.
Thank you, Mr. President. Chief, on the training, the last couple of years, you spent 8,500 last year, and then this year was 4,300, but you're asking for 30,000. I could just explain that.
I think if you look at the actual figures at the end of the year, we spent all of it. But what happens is some of it has to be encumbered, because I know we had one training program scheduled last year that was scheduled for June, and at the last minute, the instructor had to reschedule it, so it didn't actually get paid. We had to encumber it. So it doesn't show in these figures. I believe that's the reason you're seeing such a
Now-
low figure.
And like I said, I mean, I don't want to cut anywhere, but I'm looking at different things. For instance, last year, we asked for 15, and I know you said we're going to be spending, if we were to even say cut, like, say, 10,000 out of that thing, would 20,000 still be enough, or do you need that whole 30,000?
I mean, I could use double the 30,000. 15,000 just wasn't enough. I felt that doubling it now would get us closer to where we have to be. 30,000 is not enough.
Okay,
But I didn't want to come in here shooting for the moon.
okay, thank you.
Any other questions on page 38? Seeing none, we'll go to page 39. Any questions on 39? Seeing none, we'll go to page 40. Any questions on page 40? Counsel Hanlon.
Mr. Chairman, one question. Chief, you're asking for a new captain? I see, and you're getting a new captain in here?
Yes.
Okay, just quickly looking at the salaries, the appropriations for 15 and 16, it looks like you're only asking for $42,000 for captain. Is that something wrong there? Or is my math wrong?
Yeah, I don't have the breakdown. I
Okay.
can't say why.
Huh? Lieutenant stayed the same.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
that-
may be the difference between
yeah.
a lieutenant and captain's.
There may have been a promotion, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, is he coming from a lieutenant?
Yes, it would, there would have been progressive promotions.
So then are you getting up a new lieutenant also then, out of the ranks?
We did add a lieutenant, we didn't add a lieutenant to the number of lieutenants. We still have the same number of lieutenants, 11. We added a captain who is now our training captain.
Okay, okay. Gotcha, all right.
Any other questions on page 40?
Excuse me, the customary thanks.
If there aren't any, I do have one quick one from the chair. Chief, on the deputy chief line, we have 6 deputy chiefs.
Correct.
And the fiscal year 15 appropriation was $465,905. I don't know if we had a full 6 online then, because if you look at the request for this fiscal year, it looks like if the numbers stayed the same, 6 for both years, the pay for deputy chief last year was a little over $77,000, and the pay per deputy chief, on average, is about $96,900, an increase of about 25%. Are there different pay grades within there, or if you could just speak to that, I'd appreciate it.
I think it may be because it wasn't for a full year. I think that's where the difference came about,
Okay,
for the
I've-
6th.
okay, thank you. I don't have any other questions. Any other questions from the council? Seeing none, thank you very much, Chief. The next group is the police department. I think I saw Chief Mazie out there. Okay. And I believe this is on pages 33 to 37.
Food's here. Where's Maisie? Where did he go? Where did Maisie go?
Was he here?
Yeah, he was just here.
Yeah, the chief, I think he's in the hallway. Oh. Okay. Oh, okay. All right. So if the council would like, we could jump ahead. I don't know if the chief was going to handle everything under his department, parking clerk, animal control,
He'll handle,
911.
He'll handle parking clerk and animal control, but not 911.
Okay. 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 All right. So So why don't we do, why don't we take 911, if that's the will of the council? So we have that's pages 47 and 48, 911 dispatch. Could have Mr. Mastrocola before us. Good evening. If you could please just identify yourself for the record.
Ed Mastrocola, Director 911.
Thank you very much. Councilors, any questions on page 47? Council Sani.
I'm gonna ask the same question on the salaries.
Mm-hmm.
Did everybody get like a 2% or a 3% raise, or did anybody jump higher, or
It was contractual, 2%.
2%? Okay, and everybody in negotiation still, or everybody all set, or is there
No, it's still negotiation, but it's
Negotiation.
pretty much,
2%?
everything is mostly ironed out.
Okay, thank you.
Council Mangan.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Mastrocola, on overtime, I see last year you were budgeted for 30,000, and then this year, nothing. Can you explain that?
Most of it comes from a grant, so the overtime, in most situations, like 95% is funded from state grants.
From grants?
Mhm.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Any other questions on 47? Council Sani.
Thank you. On training expense, it shows that you didn't spend anything in 2015, but you're requesting 12,000? Did you have any?
Again, that was a grant. The state requires 16 hours for every dispatcher routinely. Most of the time, it's $300 per 8 hours, so you gotta figure 600 just for training. Then you need someone, the state will also reimburse the person who's working that shift for the ones who's at school. And then you give them an hour travel time, so most of the funding for training also comes from a $54,000 to $58,000 grant that the state gives out based upon calls that are dispatched.
Thank you.
Council McKinnon.
Through you, Mr. Chair, will we be looking for those grants again for funding this year?
Yes, every year.
Okay, so it's a yearly,
It's
annual?
a yearly process. There's two main grants. One's for 54, 56,000. One's for 116 to 118,000.
So that will cover your overtime plus your, well, some of your
Plus-
overtime plus
and the training.
training? Okay,
Mhm.
thank you very much.
Any other questions on page 47? Council Hanlon.
Just a quick question, yeah.
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, those grants, do they come automatically, or do you have to ask for them?
No, every year you have to apply for
Yeah,
it.
okay.
Any other questions on page 47? Seeing none?
It's not really a grant, excuse me.
Go ahead.
You're actually getting reimbursed. The city has to put the money up front. You have to wait for the canceled check. You have to wait for the diploma. You gotta make sure the student's passed. You have to send in a copy of the payroll, and then the city will get reimbursed. So it can be 30 days to 6 months out, depending on how far back the state is. So the city does have to fund it initially.
Okay, thank you for that. Council? Oh,
That's okay.
do we have the inability to hear again? Okay, all right, so everyone, invited guests, councilors, please speak into your microphones so that the folks at home can hear. Thank you very much for that explanation. Are there any questions on page 48? Council Sani.
Thank you. On the 911 dispatching, on the bottom, 2 of them went down. Can you explain why they went down? And is it new hiree, or?
We are actually in the process of hiring 3 new people. There's different criteria. There's a full-time dispatcher, there's a per diem dispatcher, and then what we call a part-time dispatcher.
But it's not adding anything from previous year? I
No,
noticed that it
it's the
stayed the same.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on this page, page 48? Seeing none, we'll excuse the customary thanks. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
We will revert back to the police department, if we could have Chief Mazie before us. And again, that is pages 33 to 37. Good evening, Chief. Good evening. If you could please identify yourself for the record. Yeah, when that light turns green, that means the microphone's on.
All right, sorry about
Excellent.
that.
Thank you, Chief.
Good evening, my name's Steve Mazie, I'm the Chief of Police.
Any questions on page 33? If there are no questions on, Counsel Hammond?
Jim, just a note, through you to the chief, I see that your, if I'm doing it right, your overtime has been cut down, 150,000?
That would be correct, yes.
Counsel Hammond, are you all set?
No, I'm just, was it to match last
Take your
year's,
time,
that's what
yeah.
it was, to match the 2015? It looks like it.
No, last year it was budgeted for yeah, 466 what's been expended to date.
Okay, so it looks like it's gonna be the same for this year.
But yeah, I mean, it's gonna be close.
Are you all set, Counsel?
I'm sorry, yes, I am.
Counsel Mangan? That's okay.
Thank you, Mr. President. Chief, under holiday, the department requested 474,000, but the mayor recommended 615,000. You could explain that?
Yes, it's, that's all contract. It's based on the amount of officers. We all the new officers we hired weren't getting full holiday. Some, you know, officers been coming on, phased in over this past fiscal year. Next year, they're all on the books. It's basically, gonna be about 9 new officers that originally weren't on the books last year, that now all are entitled to holiday pay.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Any other questions on page 33? Counsel,
Yeah.
Just to clarify as well, like we said in the first budget hearings, all the collective bargaining agreements are made full in this agreement here, so some of this stuff is a change in the way holiday pay is paid out per the collective bargaining agreement. So we have no salary reserve in the mayor's account. We try to put all the salaries as they're correctly negotiated in each particular budget. So a lot of cases, when you see a spike, it's just a change in the collective bargaining agreement.
any other questions on page 33? Seeing none, we'll go to page 34. Any questions on page 34? If there are none, we'll go to page 35. Any questions on page 35? Counsel Sally.
The question I asked the other departments, on their salaries, is the negotiation 2% or 3% on their,
I believe it's been 2%?
2%?
2% on the base, and there are some other compensation items that are being negotiated, but the base pay is, right now, is a 2% on mostly all departments there, so.
Thank you.
Any other questions on page 35? If there aren't any on 35, I do have one. And I don't know, Chief, if this would be something that you could answer, or it might be more for the auditor. Looking down the department request, all the way down the list, the department had requested one number, and then the administration has offered a higher number in every single category. That adds up to about $433,000. And I'm wondering if someone could explain that to me.
That's a result of us catching up 2 years in fiscal year 15 and 16. The compounded raises that we're assuming are going to be settled upon and fully funding the fiscal year 16 budget for all officers. So there's no offset for salary in any other budget. So that's kind of a compounding effect of fiscal year 15 and fiscal year 16, and trying to have actual numbers in there for 16.
Okay, so you're anticipating that it's going to resolve itself out at a higher number than what the department requested?
Well, we asked the departments to level fund,
Okay.
so they were just following their orders, and then we strategically decided whether we were gonna try to put all the money in the mayor's budget again, or try to apportion it out, but we feel like we're close enough in most negotiations that we have a pretty good handle on what we think it's gonna cost to fund these collective bargaining agreements, so we wanted to allocate them so that they properly reflect in the respective departments.
Okay, and it does look like for the most part, there is level funding. There's a little bit of bump in some of the lines between fiscal year 15 and fiscal year 16.
Some of the stipends and such that don't really change, but, I mean, you can pretty much figure out when the number goes up, there was some kind of bargaining with respect to that particular compensation line, whether it's holidays in one case and base pay for the most part, is, were the two driving factors in this particular one.
Okay, thank you very much. If there are no other questions on 35, we'll move to 36. Council Mangan?
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you to the chief. Chief, the crime research analyst was 51,000 was appropriated last year, and then it's up to 60,000. Could you just explain that? It's a big bump.
Sure. But as part of the salary study, we've been trying to we've done some research in the past few years, and we believe we've been underpaying her for a while.
Okay, when you say, you're looking like cities right around us and stuff?
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
thank you.
Any other questions on page 36? Council Marquez.
Hi, Chief. Chief, I see they incorporated the parking clerk. That's all in the police department now.
Correct. All parking clerk, parking enforcement officers, some of their line items, for tickets and processing and all that stuff.
Yeah, so I was, just happened to, I didn't know they put the whole department down there.
It's all in there.
Yeah. All right, thank you.
Any other questions on page 36? Seeing none, we'll go to page 37. Any questions on 36? Council McKinnon?
Chief, are you anticipating any more staff coming in, or grants to
So
furnish that?
I think we have, based on some promotions that were done earlier in this fiscal year, I think there's one opening for a patrolman right now. We're also in the process of doing a 5-year strategic plan. We're trying to figure out, where we need to be over the next 5 years and looking at what's coming into the city for development, and it's going to have an impact on our, services. But in immediacy, no, I think,
You're good.
yeah, yes, sir.
With the addition, say, of a substation or something like that, how many additional officers would you need?
Well, for us, a substation would be more to, a place to operate out of. The good thing is our current building is very congested, and doesn't allow for proper space for some of the equipment, et cetera. So just to anytime we can get people off-site, with their equipment and cars, et cetera, it's a good thing. So, it depends on, what we end up doing, when it ends up happening for development, what we would staff out of an area, out of an offsite.
So it would just be depending on what the role would be of the substation, correct?
Sure. It's a place our guys would write reports, interview people, et cetera. They don't need much, beyond
Pretty much,
space like.
okay. Thank you.
Council Mangan?
Thank you, Mr. President. Chief, on the crossing guard and matron stipend, I know it's the same last year as it is this year. Do you know when the last time was they had a raise? Was it?
So, I'm sorry?
On the crossing guards?
Yes, crossing guards.
We just
I
adjusted
think
them all
I was gonna say, I think we just adjusted them all. Was it last year?
this year.
Or this
Okay,
year?
I just see, because I see 237 and then I see 237 again.
We actually did a adjustment mid-year for them, and we based it on their years of service. So, it's reflected here because we did it in the middle of the year this year.
Oh, okay, I didn't see, okay, thank you.
The other thing, just a note on that, we have, every year we'll have a number of crossing guards leave, so someone could be at the higher rate, they leave and no longer work, we bring in someone new, they're starting in at a lower rate as well.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Are there any other questions? All right. We have on our sheet listed parking clerk, animal control, but those are both listed on 36 that we've already reviewed. Is there anyone from the department that's going to speak to that? Just yourself, Chief?
Just myself,
We've already
unless-
reviewed it. Do any of the members have a question on those items? They were on page 36. I know page 45 to 46 lists out some numbers, but it's getting moved into the department on page 36. If the members want to take a look at pages 45 and 46 first, and if there are no questions, we could excuse the chief.
That's gonna push, how's it working out?
Council Del Solo.
That's a real question. How's it working out, having the parking clerk down at the station?
It's it's working out. There's bumps in the road like anything else, but, it's working out.
Compared to being up at City Hall?
Well, we're trying to integrate, one thing we're looking to do long-term is integrate parking. Right now, the parking clerk's office is in with the traffic enforcement people, and we're trying to integrate kind of parking and traffic issues, which a lot of them go hand in hand. And so getting them to work together, and we've been doing some investments in parking enforcement. We're trying to upgrade their uniforms, give them a nice, new look for this summer. And like anything else, it's, again, space is tight, but, most of the personnel, all the personnel, they're really out in the streets.
Okay, thank you.
Council McKinnon.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to the chief. Chief, do we have a dog officer?
Canine or animal control officer?
Animal control.
It's an open position right now.
Okay, because, and are you anticipating backfilling on that? or-
Absolutely,
Okay.
yes.
And that rate would be the rate that's here now?
If, I would assume, or something close to that.
Is that a negotiated rate, or that's not contractual, correct?
No, I think it's, their union, it's a union job, yeah, it is contractual.
So, okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, we could excuse the customary thanks. Thank you, chief. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. I'm also going to leave all of you a copy, just these come off the press, 2014 annual report
Wonderful.
for us.
Thank you,
Okay,
chief.
thank you.
The next department is communications. If we could have Allison Delasola. While she's coming up, if I may from the chair, throughout the budget, we're seeing reference to salary study. Now, I don't think I've personally seen a salary study. I don't know if any of the members have seen it.
I handed
But-
it out Thursday night.
We passed it out Thursday
Did-
night.
There was, okay, so
We
I
handed
didn't
out
have a chance to take a look at that, so we do have it.
Yeah, we gave it to you
Okay.
Thursday night. If anyone doesn't have their copy and they need another one, I can make additional, but we handed
Okay.
them out on Thursday night.
Wonderful. All right, thank you.
I think Rich stapled them himself, so. That's it right there, yeah.
If,
Allison, come on up.
If I may, before Allison
Sure.
starts, just for clarification, I know that part of the study that we had with the Collins Center suggested that we include Allison's department in the budget hearings, which is what we're doing here, but there is no appropriation to be had for these departments, so a lot of this is informational purposes, but in case you think you're
care
missing
if
an
I don't see one.
appropriation, it's all completely funded by the cable access fee, so
Well,
there's
we
no
think she's
appropriation.
wonderful anyway,
My first
so-
time, I'm very excited.
Well, Allison, we
I-
think you're wonderful.
I
so-
concur, I just wanted to clarify that, though, in case anyone was looking.
Nope.
All right.
Nope, so fire away. No, I'm just
So
kidding.
with that said, is there any page in the book that lines up with that?
Well, I know we have copies of the budget. Do you happen to bring them, or do I have them?
You have them, I have
All
them.
right, I think I have them downstairs, I'll bring them up. I'll just go down and grab them, but you won't find them in here because we really didn't know how to present that as part of this, because Allison did a nice job of mimicking what these look like, but these particular budgets are from the general fund 01, and they're able to operate like that, where Allison's budget is in a special revenue account that doesn't, we don't lay out the budget as such, it's more of a general ledger account, so, I don't know, maybe that doesn't mean much to most people, but there's not appropriations part of the communications and ECTV budget, because it's more of a special revenue account, and it's accounted for differently, so, we did represent all the salaries and the expenditures of that department, but all the revenues that come in offset that, so it almost acts like its own revolving account, so, just like you don't see a revolving account budgeted like this, it's part of the budget, it's part of the ledger, but it's not part of the general fund or the enterprise fund.
Okay, thank you. Council Sachetta, I saw you had your hand in the air. Did you have a question?
Yes, Allison, at the last budget hearing Monday, today's now Thursday,
Yep.
I was the alderman, council meeting. I asked for the city buy a new sound system that we might possibly get instead of the portable system. I referred it to the mayor's office, and I was told it should go to you, Do you have any authority on getting sound system?
I do. That's something that would definitely fall under communications and ECTV, and we actually do have a new one. We have several, actually. We have the traveling lectern that we have to use for certain events where there's no power. So when you have a veterans dedication on a street corner, there's nowhere we can plug in. We have to use one of those mobile ones that the DPW sets up, and it's kind of just the speaker out of the front, the
Yeah,
mobile lectern.
right.
We don't have a choice. Last year, it might have been fiscal 15, I purchased out of my budget, an entirely new sound system that worked both on the sound stage and also for like community meetings. So that's like the big speakers, the mixer, the really powerful one, but you have to have an electrical source to use it.
They used that at the Memorial Day service, is that correct?
They did, because the new bucket truck through ISD
I was gonna
has
say,
power in it,
how
so
do they
we
get the
figured out.
power there?
You would have to use a generator, or you would have to, the new truck actually has an outlet, so as long as you kept the truck on, you could use the power, so we kind of, and, yeah.
So we're still gonna be stuck with that little small podium?
Certain events, unless you have a generator, and for those smaller events, the generator is so loud
Yeah.
that it's not even worth it. You'd
But
have to
there's-
blare the sound system.
There's
even.
no better podium or louder speaker than what you have?
The one we have is fairly new. I bought that 2 years ago. We can look into something better. I haven't really found anything. They're all kind of industry standard, you know what I mean? They're not great. They're unidirectional, because there's only that speaker on the front. So if you're not like right in front of where the person is speaking, you don't get great
Thank you very
audio,
much.
especially outside, traffic.
Thank you.
Council Mangan.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Delasola, for appearing here, and you do a great job down there. I
you.
just wanted to say that first. Second of all, are you hiring anybody additional this year, or is it the same?
A summer intern. It's for
Just
the
a
first
summer-
time this year, yeah.
Okay, great.
With the added communications work, we just thought it would be great to have an intern help us
Oh,
out this
excellent.
summer.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? Council Hanlon.
Mr. Chairman, through you to our guest, your funding comes from the cable, the TV people.
The contract with Comcast,
Right,
correct,
okay.
yes.
Is that, do they give you a certain amount a year? Do they give you what you ask for, or is it increasing or decreasing?
It's a 10-year contract, so I believe when you were mayor in 2006 was when the last one was signed. They give you a set amount that gets negotiated. I'm actually currently in negotiations. We just had a public hearing recently that some of you attended for starting in 2016 for hopefully another 10 years. So they give you a set amount. They just give it to us in increments. We break it down. They'll give us, a certain amount of capital. They give you a bulk at the beginning, and then they send you a check yearly for the rest of the capital. And then you get franchise fees, which is 4% of subscribers. So based on how many subscribers are in Everett, Comcast does the math, they give us 4%. So if you look on your Comcast bills at home, there's all those little charges down those finicky charges on the bottom. One of those goes to pay for ECTV communications budget for the city.
Yeah. Have you ever asked for anything special, like a certain thing would come up and say, could we have $8,000 or $200 or something for something special?
No, once you have the signed 10-year contract, that's it. The money, this
That's
is
it.
set. You can't go back to them for additional monies, no.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much, Allison. We appreciate everything you do.
Thank you.
The next department is Information Technologies. Mr. Paul Guerrero. Good evening.
Evening.
If you could just please identify yourself for the record.
Paul Guerrero, Director of IT.
And I believe this is on
Technology.
pages 19 and 20, councilors. Council Mangan, did you have your hand there?
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Guerrero, for appearing.
Page 19.
Just on the, only question I have is on the copiers and maintenance. Could you just explain that, up to the 45 that you need this year?
Sure, that was an account that was paid out of purchasing last fiscal year. It just covers the maintenance and management for all the network copies we have in City Hall.
Okay.
It's just moved into my department now, just so as, IT should look over.
Yeah, we're trying to align all the IT-related items, and we're moving the copiers over as one, all the kind of copiers, computers, printers, et cetera, all being morphed into the IT department. So that's just a lateral transfer from the purchasing department.
Thank you.
Any other questions on page 19? Seeing none, Council McKinnon?
The 311 expense, requested was 90, but you're only putting in for 50, or recommended 50.
That's the software for the constituent services, program that we've been discussing in the council meetings, then you call 311 and you can reach anywhere. The Collins Center did a study a few years ago, and, the costs range from 50,000 to 90,000 for the startup costs. I have a copy of the study for everybody if they'd like it. So we went on the shorter end, hoping that it will be a competitive bid and we'll be able to get it into 50,000.
If not, you'll be.
If
coming
not, we'll
back.
be knocking on your door.
Exactly. Okay, thank you.
I expect Paul will work hard to get it to 50.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Council DeFlorio?
Thank you,
Pa-
Mr.
On page
Chairman.
19?
Oh, no, 20, I'm sorry.
Any other questions on 19? We'll go to page 20. Council DeFlorio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you. I think this question will probably be for the auditor, or maybe Melissa. In regards to we have a study here, that salary study. And most of these studies, most of these salaries that are in the book were based on the study. Now, I don't see this one being based on the study. Am I reading it wrong?
The majority of them are based on studies, some of them got 2%, and that was based on how long some of them had been here, and how new the department head was. So some of them didn't see a change. Most of them did, but some of them didn't. And off the top of my
Well,
head.
this is what I disagree on. If you're gonna make a position, you make a position. If you're gonna give a raise, you give it to everybody. If you're gonna give 3%, you give 3% across the board. I've always been against people who's getting 18, who's getting 10, who's getting 7. I've always been against that, you know, and, I just, not that I'm trying to give anybody any more or any less, I can't figure that out. It's like, you know, the unions get 2% across the board. We want to bring the salaries up, that's not an issue, it's not a problem, and you know that's not a problem with me, because I believe that people should get paid for what they work.
And this one may actually have been an oversight, because it's the first time I've kind of realized that on this. So let me reach back and check it before you.
Okay.
answer.
Because there were some positions in here that
Yeah, the
I
majority
know,
of them, I believe, follow the study. But let me check on it.
okay,
Council McKinney.
thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to the Chief of Staff. On some of those study ones,
Yes.
you're looking at like a 15,000 increase,
Yes, those-
18,000
right.
increase.
So let-
These people are only getting a 2% increase across the board.
Right, on
I
last-
mean, where's the fairness in that, though? That's what I'm trying to say.
So
I think that's what you.
I understand completely what you're saying. On last Thursday, we handled the salary study. The majority of the increases that you're seeing, were based on the salary study. Some people were actually above where the salary study put them. And some people were right where the study, you know, right where the salary study said they should be. I think this could have been an oversight, so I want to check on it, because I think the majority of them were built in some way. If you look at the salary study that I handed out, you can see which ones were above or below based on the ever comparison. And so I'm trying to think of a good example to show you that was one where they're okay. Because there are several of them where they're actually right in the range where they should be. So if you look at that, you can tell from the negative and the positives that are in that last column. So for instance, trying to find you a good for instance.
Because I know there's a couple right now that I'm looking at, and they were in the 15,000 range, and one was in an 18,000 range. So, these people would be lucky if they would, you know, maybe see 1,000 or so.
Yeah, and it would depend on, right. The majority of the people that you're seeing that are non-union are based on the salary study. So you see it pretty much across the board, I believe. And like I said, this one may be,
Are they contractual as well?
no.
Okay.
We do have several employees that do have contracts, but the majority of our non-union employees do not have contracts.
Okay, so you're gonna look back at.
Yes, let me
Okay.
look back at this one, because I think this could be a mistake.
Just,
Um,
just in the sake of fairness, I mean.
Yes, of course. No, let me look back at it, and I'll get you an answer on Thursday night.
Thank you.
If that works for you.
Council Sani.
Just a question on the study here that you're talking about, the survey.
Yeah.
What towns did we use, or did we use towns?
Yep. So I have a long version of the survey as well, which I can hand out. It's just kind of confusing to read, which is why I gave you the, this side. But I have a long one as well. So they compared us to Chelsea, Medford,
You know what?
Peabody,
I'll be honest
Revere,
with you.
Somerville, and Watertown. Watertown. So, and I'm happy to hand out this
know?
big, long version. It's a little bit, the reason I gave you the max, mins, and the averages was it's a little bit less, crazy, but I'm happy to hand this out as well if everybody wants to see it. So it's the full survey is a comparison of the 6 cities, and it gives you the range in each city. So it gives you the minimum and maximum for each position, what the current incumbent is making, and then the average is based on the mean of all of these positions. Would you like to see the big version?
Yeah, if we do, before we go there, because I do have a follow-up on that as well, do we have any other questions for IT? So we can get this poor gentleman out of here. If there are none, thank you very much. With regards to the report, Melissa, were there any other questions from?
No,
I want to follow up on Council Sani's question, because we do have a 2-page summary.
Yes, we have a
And
summary.
we're talking about a study. So the cities were Peabody, Chelsea, Medford, Revere, and Watertown?
So it's Chelsea, Medford, Peabody, Revere, Somerville, and Watertown.
Somerville,
Yep.
okay. And how in-depth is this study? How many pages is it? Because a 2-page summary is, that's
Yep.
all that
So
they
what the
did?
Collins Center does, basically, is they send a survey to every community that they compare, is comparable to us. They look basically at what the city's populations are, what their budget is like, and where they are located. So it doesn't make sense to compare us to Holyoke or
Sure.
Springfield, you know what I mean?
Yep.
So, and we get these surveys a lot too. We'll get a questionnaire of the same type. And what they do is these different communities fill out these surveys telling you what their minimum and maximum is for each position in their salary chart, and what the current incumbent is making, and how long the current incumbent is here, has been there. And then what they do is they do a data analysis on the data that they collect, and they give you a comparison on what your current incumbent is making and where they should be.
Okay.
And one of the things that's good about doing it this way is it takes all the personalities out. It tells you what a position should be making, regardless of who's in it, what the person's making across the board, which is important because you don't want to lose people that you've trained or that are
Correct.
good caliber employees to other communities that are around us, which happens. So if you'd like, it's short. It's only 4 pages. I'm happy to have.
And with that survey, with the study that they've done, do they earmark budget amounts for these communities that we're being compared to? Population?
I can do that for you. This merely is just the data
Okay.
spurt.
Yeah,
This is a throw up of data that they have made for us.
Yeah,
that-
this is
yeah.
just, first of all, I've always said this, and I know that everybody in this chamber feels this way. We are very fortunate. We have a lot of very hardworking, dedicated people in the city. We don't want to lose anybody, that's for sure. But there's a lot of bump in the budget in all different areas based on this study. And for my own purposes, and if there are any other items that the council would like to have, the items that I'd be interested in per community would be population, average salary, budget, and years, and I think you mentioned that they did have years on the job in there already.
Yes, so
So-
what you'll see here is the number of steps that each has on their maximum and minimums. That's what you're going
Okay.
to see here, and what the current incumbent is making.
Okay.
And this is based on FY14 numbers.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah, those would be the things that I, in addition to this, what I'd like to see is actual population, as I said, average salary in the community, and what their annual budget is.
Okay.
And that will help, at least for me personally, to do apples to apples.
Anything
Are
else
there,
that-
are there any other items that the council members would like incorporated with those numbers? Oh, property valuation? That's a
So
good
you
one
want
too.
the EQV?
Yeah, that would be great. Yep. Okay. Anything else that we'd like to incorporate on that? Okay. Excellent.
Okay, I'll bring that with
Thank
me
you.
on
We
Thursday.
really appreciate
No
that.
problem.
Okay, next up is city services and DPW. You can look at it and line it all up. Absolutely. Okay. If we could have, please have Jerry Navarro in front of us. Jerry, if you could please just identify yourself for the record.
Jerry Navarro, DPW Director.
And there's a lot that falls under the umbrella. Are you going to be addressing all the pages, or are there individuals that are hopping up? Okay. I think this goes pages 49 to 62. So we can start at page 49. Councilor Napolitano.
Thank you. Overtime. Hate to lead off with that, but we've had conversations about it, and again, I'm happy with what the answers I've received, but I see the overtime budget has dropped from, what was budgeted, 300,000 last year, which actually, to date, has been expended 478,000, and we're showing 36. Are we breaking this down into separate departments now?
Yes, we are.
All right, so if I took those if I took those numbers off the other sheets, and I don't want to get ahead, but I'm coming up with a total of 361,000
That would be
from the
correct.
various departments?
Correct.
Okay. And what stopgaps are we doing to kind of keep control on overtime? I mean, overtime's important to a lot of our employees because they count on salary, but we also want to make sure by the end of the year we're able to accommodate the work, the projects we need to get done.
This is one of the areas, as we discussed with the auditor, that we're gonna break the department down into significant area, the respective areas, so for better tracking purposes for the overtime and their budget themselves.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions on page 49? Counsel Marquez. Counsel Hanlon.
Just noticing quickly, Mr. Chairman, through you, that the Public Works Commission, they have a clerk to the board, and they're not going to have a clerk to the board.
What is that again?
The clerk to the board of commissioners is no longer to be filled.
The clerk of
On page
the
49?
clerk of the board is actually the administrative assistant that currently works down there, so there's no more stipend for that. It's just, it's paid hourly.
All right, I think that's the next page. If we
No,
could,
oh,
yeah, I
I'm
did.
sorry, I'm
That's okay.
sorry.
Is there
Sorry.
are there any more questions on page 49? Counsel
I
Del
do that all
Sol.
the time.
I'll pick up with you on page 50 if you like.
On the lower half of page 49, last year, we had no expenses at all on a good amount of items, and all of a sudden, we're up to like, let's see here, gasoline and diesel fuel, 315,000.
If I could just try to explain, maybe this will help everybody. For purposes of budgeting this year and the new administrative code, what we did is, last year, we had budgeted all the salaries as part of 490, and you didn't see any expenses at all. And then 491 through 497 had all expenses, but no salaries. So what we did this year is we actually put all the positions in their respective departments and the expenses associated with those. So in facilities maintenance, you'll see the staffing, you'll see the expenditures, and the engineering, and the public, and the highway, and the parks and cemetery. All the personnel will be in that particular section, as well as the associated expenses. So it's a little bit tricky to kind of go back and forth and compare from one budget to the next. But for instance, in 490, what you'll see is the director, the administrative assistant, a business manager, and all the fleet management people within this budget, and those associated expenses will be in the bottom half of that. And then as you continue on, we can kind of show you how we broke it out. We did that, and we apportioned out overtime, we apportioned out night differential, et cetera. And to Council Napolitano's point, we're hoping that this breakout allows each superintendent to manage their particular department and their particular use of overtime a little better. We have done some things within each department to try to hedge off some of the overtime, but we're, first and foremost, we're trying to allocate all the dollars to the respective departments and have those department heads manage those costs.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions on page 49? Counsel Simonelli.
Thank you, Mr. President, through you to the director. On the towing, there's nothing appropriated. Now, this year we get the $1,400, but $1,450. What is that for?
The towing, for the most part, with regard to city vehicles, is covered by the contracts. But this is the rare case when we actually may need a car moved for construction purposes, emergency purposes, or otherwise. So we have a small amount in there for shifting around vehicles. The city. So if there was a water break and we needed a couple vehicles moved, we need to have the tow company move them. But if any vehicle in the city breaks down and needs to be towed, those are free of charge.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on page 49? Seeing none, we'll move to page 50. Counsel Hanlon, did you want to follow up that question you had earlier?
Yes, please.
You have the floor.
Just going back to the clerk to the board of the commissioners.
The clerk of the board used to be a separate individual who got a stipend, but now we just have existing staff act as the clerk, and they get paid their hourly rate accordingly. So that's built into one of the administrative assistant positions' salary.
One of these positions above here?
Yeah, it's actually the clerk of the Water and Sewer Department is the clerk of the board now, Caitlin. And she, you won't see her on here because she was in the Water and Sewer Department when you appropriated that budget.
Not here, okay.
Are you all set, Counselor?
Yes, thank you, I'm sorry.
Counselor Del Sol.
On the director, he went down on his rate from 109,000 to 105.
We have a new employee there, and that's how much was negotiated.
Okay, and the business manager, is that, you were just talking about different departments?
That's a new position that we are anticipating having this year that we'd like to see. That person would be, and I can have Jerry explain. You want to explain what that position would be?
Well, last year you guys voted the business manager down for the budget, so this year we decided to go with taking the fleet manager out and replacing with the business manager. The business manager will supervise the fleet operation, but also, he will also, let me see, hold on. In collaboration, close with coordination with executive director, he'll plan, organize, administer, coordinate reviews, and evaluate day-to-day activities of the city through multiple levels of management and supervision within the city's services. He's gonna be handling contracts, grievances, and basically being almost like second in command and have a reign over the other superintendents in department.
So that's why the fleet manager is 0 now?
Correct.
Correct, okay. All right, thank you.
Counselor McKinnon.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So the fleet manager, you felt that you don't need anyone?
I needed a stronger individual and more experience in other capacities to assist me in the daily operations.
Will he be, will this business manager, will he also be assuming some of the work of the fleet manager, or will that be divvied?
Correct, correct. He
Okay,
will.
so he'll be just shifting some way?
Be a dual,
Okay.
right,
So he'll have a dual role?
correct.
Thank you.
Counselor Mangan.
Thank you, Mr. President, to you, to Mr. Navarro. Jerry, I see that you're looking for 2 equipment repairmen. Are we, to hire, are we backlogged that much? If we would just, an example, if we would just give you 1, would that be satisfactory, or do you definitely need both of those? Do you have that backlogged?
I need both. I request both.
How many vehicles with these, I see the 4 people there, equipment repairmen. I mean, are they, how many total vehicles are they, do they maintain between all the trucks and everything else, would you say?
Throughout the entire city?
Yeah, with these particular 4 repairmen, what would they be responsible for?
I can help answer that because I just had an inventory. We just completed an inventory. We have 170 vehicles and 35 pieces of equipment, trailers, plated, registered equipment. That doesn't include ride-on mowers and such like that. But this is, we have 170 vehicles registered on the road, and we have about 33 trailers, plated vehicles as well. So over 200, and that doesn't include all of the equipment, repairs for lawn mowers and snow blowers and stuff like that.
Okay, and the other thing
Remember,
is,
they're dealing with all of our vehicles at fire, so if a police car is down or a parking enforcement car is down, we need to get them back up and operating as quickly as possible, so.
and I
that's
assume
why
then,
procedure is-
by hiring these, I assume right now, we probably have a little bit of a backlog trying to get stuff out because of sitting around, because it's, can't get repaired?
Yes, and we also had Rich Pasquarello just retire as well, so.
Okay, and then, Jerry, also, for these people, like, I mean, I know whether it's a lawnmower or a police car or something, or like something that cuts grass, whatever, like a bigger thing that cuts grass, do these people, do they have to like constantly take classes, or how does this work for them to be trained on all these pieces of equipment?
Majority of them, that comes with the qualifications when they apply for the position. Others vary from different, jobs, but most of them have the requirements.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Sachetta.
Yes. To Mr. Desquet, you say 170 vehicles. Could you break that down, what departments, in other words, roughly speaking, how much does city service have, how many fire department, how many police, you have that?
I wish I brought my book. It had it all broken down. I believe city services had about 50 of the vehicles. Police had probably another, say, 40 or so vehicles. Then you had the fire department, the school department, and just Yeah, code enforcement has about 12 vehicles or so, and again, there's maybe more than that with the trailers. We have a whole lot of trailers up at the old high school for emergency FEMA stuff. We have one trailer full of cots, one trailer full of stuff to fight chemical spills, all those. Anything that had a plate on it, we did an inventory for insurance purposes and for, inventory management purposes. And I have a great breakdown. I'll be happy to share it with you, and I'll give you each and every department.
I just want to know now to Mr. Navarro, we handle the maintenance of all these vehicles, fire engines, fire trucks, police cars, all of these pieces of equipment are handled down there at the city yards?
If there's something that we can't handle, we sub out.
You do.
And fire has its own mechanic.
Yeah, fire has.
Specially trained fire mechanic.
Oh, they do.
They have fire has a mechanic in their budget, so every vehicle other than fire is pretty much handled down at the fleet manager.
Thank you.
Counsel McKinnon.
Through you, Mr. Chair. These two motor equipment repair, are those union positions?
Yes.
Okay. And the rest, I'm assuming, is the union as well. When you say sub out, what funds does that come out of? When you're subbing out?
You could see there's repair maintenance lines in each of the, on page 49, you'll see some expenditure lines, so those would be for vendors. Say, for instance, the transmission went, or you need some kind of, major job that's.
Okay, how much is the total on that? 'Cause
We have $115,000 for DPW, $35,000 for police, and $10,000 for ISD, so 160 total. ISD is pretty low. They have all pretty new vehicles. They're passenger cars for the most part.
Yeah.
DPW obviously has a lot of heavy equipment, and the police is a hybrid of both, but certainly a volume of vehicles, and a lot of those police cars are 24/7, so need a little more maintenance than the typical vehicle.
Those budget line items are a combination of parts and subbing out. That money doesn't all go to subbing out.
So it's a combination of
Exactly,
grabbing the
yes.
parts and then
Yes.
having someone come in to.
Exactly.
Okay.
And a lot of the time when it's being subbed out, it's more of like a larger truck, something that you need special training on to be fixed.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions on page 50? I would like to follow up on that question from the chair. So we have two mechanics. Now, with the exception of the fire department in their specialized training for their repairs, these two individuals are responsible for over 200 vehicles and everything else?
Along with the other two mechanics.
Well,
We'll have 4 total.
yeah, so we have two now, but we're looking for 2 more. So
Correct.
up to this point, we've had 2
And-
folks.
And 1 foreman.
Okay, all right. And I know that the numbers that were talked about, the 115,000, 10,000, are parts and labor. Do you have a rough guesstimate of how much of that is labor, how much we've actually subbed out versus done in-house?
I don't have those figures in front of me right now. I'm sure we can get those.
Rich, do you have anything? If you could get that?
Yeah, we can gauge.
Okay, and I.
We can look up some information on that.
And I would like to see the list of assets, I'm sure the council would as well, with where the various vehicles and everything are, what department, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah. All right, if there are no other questions on 50, we'll move forward to 51. Any questions on page 51?
Chairman?
Counsel Hanlon.
Through you to the gentleman, I'm looking at the personnel, and we have no figures from 2014 and 2015, which I understand they're not there, but, and nothing for 2015 expended. But what we're looking at is 2016, and we have nothing to compare it to. And the only thing I can look at is the part-time, and the part-time was $14,851. That was for 2015, and we're gonna go up 200%. That's up to $50,000. That's.
I think for salary purposes, your best way to compare is to look at the detail behind it. It'll give you the full-time equivalents. It'll give you the changes in the salary. So I know it's tough to navigate it from this soft right report, but the following page with,
The boss yells at me when I go a page ahead. you
We're
know?
just trying to
You know?
keep it uniform. If you would like, because there was a question on that, we can jump ahead to the salary pages first, and then come back to expenses after, if the council prefers. Because I know that's where the meat of the questions are, is on that next page. So we could do that, and then we could always move
No.
back to expenses.
I'll wait till we get over there then.
Okay. Councilor Delasola.
On the building repair and maintenance, last year was 218,000. We are looking for 620,000. And the mayor wants, sorry. The mayor wants 420,000. Is that gonna hurt you guys, or is this for the departments?
I mean, some of the larger items that were cut out by the mayor, we feel we can address through the CIP process, but there are a variety of items in existing buildings that need to be repaired, and a lot of them aren't necessarily bidded out, but we do it a lot with in-house personnel, but the materials and such need to be purchased through this particular budget. So I know Jerry and Rich O'Donnell put together a pretty extensive list of needs that throughout the city that they're trying to, let's call it, the goals would be to get all these repairs done. So we wanted to cut back a little bit on the appropriation figure. We can deal with some of it through CIP planning, but certainly, in some respects, as much money as you put in this line, I'm sure that we can spend up trying to repair the various buildings in the city. But I'll let Jerry talk a little bit about some of the
In-house
initiatives.
to save money on the difference.
Yeah, most of this money would be used to try to buy the materials to do some of the repairs in-house. But again, I'll defer to Jerry on a lot of the initiatives on that.
Okay.
As we know, we have a emergency generator for the city service, which is roughly around $60,000, and we also need an additional one down at the Armory, same cost, 60 grand. Compressed AC unit at the power end, which is around 50,000. And Rich, I don't know if we have, do you have any other than those two? I mean, the bulk of it's right there, just with the generators and the AC units.
You want to do it in-house or go out?
No, those ones gonna be in that 420.
Okay. That's what okay, I see what you're saying. All right, that's good, thank you.
Any other questions on page 51? Council McKinnon.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Just, let's see, expended out last year, city buildings, electricity and gas. Are you anticipating more usage, or there's a bigger figure there? That's why I asked.
The rates are higher.
You'll be getting a request for funds for that. We, I think most people might recognize that the electric rates went way up over this winter, and the city certainly had the same effect. So, unfortunately, we will be coming in for a request of free cash to supplement this particular budget. And the 830 amount, to be honest, I'm not sure if that's going to be sufficient. It's tough to budget on the electric rates and how they're going to go up or down. In some respects, we know that we're a little bit handcuffed. If we need more, it's kind of out of our control. So we do our best to try to come up with a true number there. But I certainly don't want to put $1.2 million in there and look as if it was a padded number. So we've hedged it up a bit. We're hoping that there's some rate regulations that will bring the rates down, and hopefully we can get through 12 months with the 830. But you're certainly going to see it exceed what we budgeted in 15, and we're just trying to wait till as close to the end of the fiscal year as we could so we can get a pretty accurate number for you.
Thank you. Council Sani.
Thank you. On the electricity, I know myself, I can go out and look at other companies to bring us in my usage, I believe, electricity. Do we also look to see if we can do that? I'm not sure.
Yeah, we have a broker that we use, and we have a contract right now. We brought the rate down actually every year per term, which is good. And we locked in for 24 months, I believe, fairly recently. But yes, we do use a broker to go through and get us prices.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on page 51? Seeing none, we'll move to page 52. Any questions on page 52? Council Hanlon.
Mr. Chairman, back to that question I had asked regarding the salaries and everything, but I see the 621 for the salary and 632, so that's only going up $11,000. But you've added one person, and but the overtime is going up like I say, 200%, going up to $50,000, and that's only for one extra person. And I'm wondering where that extra overtime is gonna go. Is it gonna go into that, the building maintenance we had in the previous page? The $400,000, is they,
You're reading the right line, because I think you were looking at part-time then versus.
yes.
I think you're reading the part-time line, Counselor.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Oh,
part-time.
I'm sorry,
part-time.
overtime was 0 last year, and the $72,000 is, we basically ran a year-to-date
Okay, no,
overtime.
no, I'm sorry, I'm talking about the part-time.
Oh, well, we have a stockroom supervisor at $35,000, which is driving that up, so
Okay.
that's the last position on that budget.
And that's gonna be in overtime? No, I'm sorry, oh, that's, oh,
No,
I'm sorry.
that's
Okay,
part-time.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you, thank you.
Any other Council Simonelli?
Thank you, Mr. President, through you, Director. I see you're adding a lead custodian, general maintenance, a night guy. Okay? And he's gonna work 40 hours. What would his hours be?
I'll probably have to say 6 PM to 2:30 AM.
What would his job prescription do? What would he be doing?
That's gonna create to knock down the overtime utilizing for the maintenance and cleanup of the police station, which we've been receiving numerous calls with 24-hour operation, yet we only stage someone over there for 4 to 6 hours per day, leaving the building unattended for 16 to 18 hours of the day, which by the time the next day he comes rolling in, we have a mess to deal with every day.
But he wouldn't, would he be doing like more or less security work, or is he gonna be doing regular cleaning?
Custodial work.
And he's gonna hit all the buildings?
No, primarily just 2 buildings.
Seems like a good job.
It's gonna be a great job.
I like those hours. By the way, did you find a person who's got that job?
We have it in-house.
And who's that?
We'll have to, so it'll be a change in working conditions. We'll have to post it internally because it's a union position and see who bids on it.
Okay, I might put a bid in. Thank you.
Council McKinnon?
Through you, Mr. President, to the Chief of Staff. The Facilities Maintenance Superintendent, that's not a union position, correct?
No, anything
And-
that says unclassified
Sure.
is a non-union position typically. Anything you see like a W in front of, or a C, or an
That would
A,
be- yeah.
typically is.
Okay, and then that pay increase would be part of that study as well?
That's part of the salary study,
Okay.
correct?
Thank you.
Any other questions on page 52? Seeing none, we'll move to 53. Sherry, I think you said you're going to cover the whole department? Okay. Any questions on page 53? Seeing none, we'll move to page 54.
If you don't mind, just a point
Sure.
of clarification on the
Absolutely.
Director of Engineering. We are currently interviewing for that position. We're actually starting our, is it second or third round? Second round of interviews now, have it down to a few people. I just wanted to give you a heads up since the position has not been filled yet, but we are actively recruiting for it. We wanted to get the director position satisfied first, before we began that process.
Thank you very much. Council Marquesi.
And Melissa, he'll be overseeing what, the 2 other people in that department?
Yeah, so, he'll be the director, he'll be overseeing the city engineer and the senior account clerk, and he will, per the job description, have to be a PE, which is a professional engineer. He'll have to have a license that he can stamp plans.
Thank you.
Any other questions on page 54? Council Simonelli.
Yes, I see you getting rid of the stormwater coordinator.
Falling under the water department.
Oh, he's moved out of there.
Yeah, he was budgeted in the Water Department for fiscal year 16, so that position just moved over to the Water and Sewer operation. So it's 0 here, but it's budgeted in the Water and Sewer Department.
Thank you.
Any other questions on 54? Seeing none, we'll move to page 55. Any questions on page 55? Council Simonelli.
The refurbishing of parks is nothing, I mean, you all done fixing the
the parks?
All of the park refurbishing is handled through the capital plan, and we certainly are not done working on parks. There were several that were part of the bond authorization from last week, so definitely not done refurbishing parks, but we budgeted through the capital plan.
Okay, and I have one more question. On the graffiti removal, it seems though you only appropriating this $500, what?
That's mostly for the supplies for graffiti removal. I think a lot of our graffiti removal is done through the state comes in and helps do a lot of that. Jerry can probably elaborate on that.
Our own graffiti with the machine?
We do, it's just for the material. We have a machine, but we just
Yeah.
need the chemicals.
We're getting a lot more graffiti than we used to, but that's the time of year, I guess. Okay, thank you.
Councilor Napolitano.
Okay, through the chair. Landscaping, we've gone up from 85,000 from last year to 220,000. What exactly is in the plans that's creating this more than almost triple increase?
We have the GTA, Glendale Park is on a 3-year contract, and that's the bulk of the 220 right there.
Half of the 220 is the contract for the landscaping for Glendale Park.
It's not really just
Not just
landscaping, yeah.
landscaping, right.
It's a maintenance
The
contract
maintenance,
for the whole
irrigation
park.
system.
Right.
How was it that this wasn't all handled with the, see, I'm getting a lot of questions asking me why Glendale Park is still pretty much, seems to be hands-off a little bit as far as using the grass and all that. Shouldn't we have been past the point now where we can utilize that
We can-
state with
the
any
parks-
issues?
The park's under no discretion not to use.
Okay, that's good to know. I like to hear that publicly. Good, thank you.
I had a similar question today, actually, so I think that there may be a rumor going around. If there's someone who has a permit for the park, so someone who's paid for a permit, softball, baseball, et cetera, obviously they've paid to use the park for that hour or 2 hours, other people can't use it, but other than that, that park is open for people to come and use.
Okay. And I think part of it too has to come up with a comment that was overheard in last week's meeting, is that the celebration, 4th of July celebrations was going to be done at a different park, Lafayette.
Yeah, we can't-
Why is Glendale Park no longer?
Well, so there's a couple of reasons why. One, we actually, with the gate there, we can't really drive the inflatables and everything else onto the grass there. It's kind of impossible for us to get the stuff on there. And since we just spent all that money on that park for that grass, it didn't really seem to make sense to drive the trucks on and park them and have the indents and everything. So that's why we moved it to Edith Street, since it hasn't been done recently. But with Edith Street, it's a lot more open. Actually, we went, Allison went down there with some of the different vendors this week, and they're excited about it, because I think it's gonna be easier for them to get in and for us to utilize, so I think it's gonna work out well.
All right, thank you.
Councilor Del Sol.
On the topic of the landscaping at Glendale Park, the sprinkler system down there, I know the grass still looks kind of tough shape.
Yes,
There's-
we had a electrical glitch that we just found out about 3 weeks ago, and GTA's on top of it, has fixed the situation. And as you can see, the grass is starting to come back a little bit, the greenish. It did get brown for a while, a little tint, but it's starting to take.
On that repair, are we paying GTA to fix that, or are we chasing after the contractor
chasing
that
after the contract.
put it in, installed it? All right, thank you.
Councilor McKinnon.
Through you, Mr. President. On that note, was there any type of, like, a hole in the middle of the park? And was that caused by like, maybe the irrigation system or something to that effect?
A hole?
Yeah, like a small hole out there. They had a barrel on before, I believe it was before, like, girls softball started.
I don't know of any hole.
Okay. I know they had a barrel out there and that was covering it, so I know I seen it actually, but I was just wondering if that was anything to do with the irrigation system that was
Well,
underneath?
There was a problem with the irrigation system,
Okay.
correct, yes.
What was the problem with that?
There was 2 wires that were faulting that he
And
had
it wasn't triggering off?
wasn't, yeah, there were, actually, I was down there one night watching the softball, and I saw the baseball diamond, I see the sprinkler heads go on, spout out, and then go back down again. And that's why I call them up, it kind of
Yeah.
happened every 10 minutes. So
That's a
that was the
shame,
problem.
because the place is a good park, I mean, now, this will cover all the maintenance of that? That 220?
Correct.
And that's the
Well, that's
estimate you got from
only
GTA?
111 is the
111 is
the
Glendale.
220.
Oh, okay,
The rest of it is the landscaping contract for the islands
okay,
and the actual cost of the flowers.
okay. So that's the other end of it?
Right,
All right, so it's 111 that's down there?
correct.
And that includes winterization, of all the irrigation, they drain the systems, put everything in so that the systems don't break during the winter, and all of that as well.
Now, are they planning to do any type of, like, ripping up down there that may cost more money?
We plan on redoing the infield dirt of each diamond next year. It just happened to be a dust bowl for the last 2 seasons, and we think it was, I want to talk with the artisan who designed the park about the actual texture and the soil that they used.
Should be
'Cause
clay,
I
right?
don't think it was the
Not
right
clay?
texture, and it
Okay.
obviously is showing now, so we're gonna entertain that after the season's over.
And what would the cost of that be, Jerry?
I haven't gone to that conversation about cost yet.
So that price is not included in this as of yet?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
Council Del Sola.
On that note, Florence Street Park that we're redoing over, and we're not using the same infield dirt as we used in Glendale?
No, that's separate, that's totally different. It's Florence Street from Glendale.
No, the dirt itself.
The dirt is the same dirt as there now, it's just been, scarified, that's all.
Okay, I just don't want to have a dust bowl down there again like,
No.
like Glendale Park. Thank you.
Any other questions on page 55? If I may, on that landscaping line, Melissa, you'd mentioned that about 111 of that's Glendale, and then the balance was islands and flowers. Is that throughout the city, or is that,
Yeah, we have a contract with Carboni
Okay.
for over a dozen sites, so, Werner Park, various islands, the Sweets of Rotary, and then we have a contract with McHugh's Florist, which is where we buy the actual, flowers, bushes, et cetera.
okay, and both of those figures are incorporated in this figure, 109?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions on page 55? Seeing none, we'll go to page 56. Council Del Sol.
I'm looking at the Craftsman, the first one. Let's jump down to the foreman. That's the 49,000, I'm looking at right? 49,900. And going back to the other page, and nothing against custodians, but he's making more than a craftsman. A custodian's making more than the foreman itself. Is that correct? Like I said, none of the custodians, we need them.
What other page did he go back?
I'm just looking at a foreman that's out in the streets working, is making 49,000, and the custodian's making 50.
What page do you have that on, Council? Okay.
No. No.
The lead custodians are technically the foremen of the custodians, so they're like the custodian bosses. They're the supervisory custodians.
Yeah,
So that's what you're seeing there. So all of these, obviously, all of these positions are union, negotiated salaries. And on the salary chart that we negotiate with the union every year. But those custodians that you're seeing there are actually the supervisory custodians.
And what is their raise, the rate this year? Is it 2.5?
It's 2%.
2%?
2%. And I think we're still in negotiations with, no, we've settled with.
no,
Is that settled?
no, it's not settled yet, but
Still,
a W-10, you gotta, if you look at the grade, it's W-10 versus W-11, and one of them's a top step W-10, and the other position is a step 3 W-11, so, yeah, in some cases, it may only be a, less than $1 an hour difference, so, when you extract that out, it may not look as much, but, and then the W-4, obviously, the step 4 is higher than the step 3, so, I can show you a copy of the pay scale of the positions and the rates, but most of these positions just fall into whatever step in whatever rank they are.
so your craftsman would be somebody with the hydraulic license and all that stuff?
Which craftsman are you referring to?
The first one,
On which
Uh,
page?
60.
Sorry, I had that.
Yeah, you went past it. I'm following Mr. Hands' lead now.
I'm lost.
You going ahead on me?
Yeah, where are we?
56.
Yeah, well, yeah, same thing, 40, the lead craftsman, he's, the first one on there, 47,900. Is that the craftsman, just a description of his title?
That's correct.
Danielle, right.
And those are lack of a better term, those are the laborers, and the positions you're comparing to are more like the foreman type positions which oversee. So you go laborers, foreman, the superintendent, and director. You're looking at the SMEOs and HMEOs are technically labor positions. The W-10s and W-11s are foreman type positions for those laborers.
And they're still in talks, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
But the higher the number is, typically the more supervisory, higher skilled.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on page 56? Counsel Marchese.
What is a tree warden?
Tree warden is a tree arborist. He would come out, if there's a tree to be cut down or taken down throughout the city, we'd have to call a tree arborist who would go out there, verify the tree, whether it's needed to take down or not take down, or to trim or not to be trimmed.
Was he there last year? Was he?
Yes.
Was he?
And state law actually requires us to do that.
Counsel McKinnon. Oh, I'm sorry, are you all set, Counsel Marchese? Counsel McKinnon.
Through you, Mr. President, and he was there last year because FY15 it has a zero figure.
Yeah, we actually hired him mid-year.
Mid-year?
Yeah, we were.
That's why it's zeroed out?
Yeah, it's an extensive process that you have to follow when you
Yeah.
have a tree that's not a public safety hazard. Well, in order for us to take a tree down without a hearing, it has to be deemed a public safety hazard by the tree warden.
Mhm.
If not, the tree warden has to go through an entire hearing process in order to take a tree down. About halfway through the year last year, we realized that we needed help doing that, so we went ahead and hired someone.
So this, okay. So you guys, you put him in we'll call it midstream.
Yes, and that's why he's not reflected.
All right. And you funded that how? Just out of the budget?
Rich worked a miracle.
Rich did it.
In some cases, it's whether employee leave service. I mean, unfortunately, we have people pass away. We've had positions unfilled, so there is usually salary that.
Necessity of need.
Yeah, and in this case, we definitely
This wouldn't be
need
a
to have.
revolving fund or anything like that we pulled money from, correct?
No, but if you find me a source of revenue, I'll put it in one.
Exactly. The other question that I had was, these steps that we were talking about, how many, do they go up to 5, 7, 12? Is that how it
Four
works?
steps.
It's only 4 steps, that's the senior step?
Currently, it's 4 steps, yes.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Any other questions on page 56? I apologize if you repeated this, and if you did, I'll go back and watch tape. I will make you go through it again. Senior account clerk, did anyone ask about that? It looks like it's another new position. If no one has asked about that, could you just explain what that individual would be doing?
The senior account clerk is gonna be working on the operations manager. We're trying, like I said, we're trying to break down each area with their own clerk to help them assist them in the budget.
Yeah, to help, I believe that the one as FTE is, I believe, an error. This particular senior account clerk, the 0, shows that we didn't have one budgeted. To try to help, again, administer the budget, we wanted to have every superintendent have its own, his or her own account clerk for purchase requisitions, for attendance, just for dealing with each. I mean, each of these divisions of the DPW are almost essentially their own budget going forward in 16. So we're trying to match up a clerk with a superintendent so that they can monitor, especially within the software system, doing requisitions and administering contractual agreements and doing all the payroll, time, attendance, stuff like that. We're hoping that we can have one match up, and then they can cross-train and cover for each other when there's vacations, sick, and otherwise.
Great. Jerry, I just got to note that unfortunately, people at home can't hear you. The microphone isn't as good. I know you got all your paper that you're trying, space is a premium over there, but
Wanna
if you
start
could.
over again?
No. So if you could just reach into the microphone a little bit more when you're answering, we'd appreciate that. And any other questions on 56? All right. Before we run over to 57, I'm keeping a little laundry list of requests. So one of the other things, and we'll just touch base at the end of this, just make sure that any other information the councils might need. One thing that I know I would like to see is for all of the anticipated positions, I would like to have a list of responsibilities for each of those positions, and I'd like to also see what the list of qualifications are for each of those individual jobs. So I'm keeping a laundry list as we go through at the end. We'll just wrap up, make sure we have all the information everybody needs in order to review. Any questions on page 57? Council Del Sol.
Just curious what an electric outdoor field is.
Those are the lights at the stadium, and we got approved to put new lights in, and that's the anticipated increase of the cost of the new lights.
They're gonna shine on the, outside the field, like the back of the field, where it's dark?
No, there's two lights being installed.
There's a dark spot, that was complained about by the school department. It's basically kind of in the bleachers, but also I think, right kind of in the middle of the field as well. So there's two new lights that are being installed because of that. And this is a chargeback, so this is all paid for by the school department.
By the school department? All right, thank you.
Any other questions on 57? Seeing none, we'll move to page 58. Any questions on page 58? Council Sachetta.
Yes, on the street cleaning supplies, we no longer have street cleaners, do we? We sublet that out now?
We sublet it, but we also gonna have one at our convenience, obviously, to do main drags, weekends, special events. God forbid there's a traffic accident, clean up the debris.
Do we have any old street cleaners now that we turned in or anything? Because we had 2 or 3 of them, do we not?
We had 2 of them.
We're gonna surplus the 2 street sweepers on municipal bid. We have an order coming down to surplus a bunch of old vehicles that we're gonna auction off.
Thank you.
Any other questions on page 58? Council Simonelli.
That's what I like the trees. Says now it's funded, 14,000, you all done, planting trees? Now it's funded 0.
What page is
Oh,
Where
am I
is
on the
that?
right page?
Page, is that on page 58?
Yeah, 57. What page is, am I on the right? Am I on the right page? The trees, yeah, and why is it, you not, am I okay now?
That's tires. Tires and tires.
Oh, gee, trees.
I thought it was me.
I told you I
I
went
said,
there.
there's trees on this page and I don't see it.
I told you I went there in high school, didn't I?
you for the custodian.
Yeah,
All right. Yeah,
that's the reason why.
so,
I was getting a flashback from the 60s, maybe. All right.
all right. So, did you have a
Excuse
question?
me.
Did you have a question on the tires or no?
No, no way.
Okay.
I like the trees anyway.
Page 58. Any other questions on page 58? Council McKinnon.
Just briefly, why everything's zeroed out?
All those zeroed out were the, with regard to the fleet management, which we moved over the account 490.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
If there are no more questions, Council Hanlon.
On page 59.
Okay. Is there anything else on 58?
Oh,
Seeing none, we'll move to 59.
Thank you.
John, you're too fast for your own good.
I know.
All right, Council Hanlon, you have the floor on page 59.
On page 59, I'm looking at the FY 215 budget, and I look at the total is $999,000 for equipment and expenses. And Huh?
He's on
I'm
58.
on page 58.
Oh, you're still on 58?
Yes.
So I apologize.
I
You had
do
said
too.
59. I'm sorry.
But anyway.
Page 58, go
With
ahead.
$999,000 for the FY 2015 budget, and you had expended in FY 2015 $790,000 and change. And so that would mean you did very well. The thing is, I'm looking at the list that I have that says the returns, and you've only returned back $20,000. Did you save any of that money?
What you're looking at is a snapshot in time of what's been expended. A lot of the purchase orders and everything are in place right now, which you won't see reflected in this. You're just seeing actual expended, so there's a lot of money that's actually been encumbered for upcoming expenses in June 30th. So I think unfortunately 20,000 might be generous. I'm hoping we don't have to come back for more money, but no, all these dollars are pretty much accounted for. It's just that in this particular budget report, you're not going to see what's been encumbered for bills that are coming due over the next well, now we got 1 month, but a lot of our May bills will be coming due right now, and then we'll encumber all our June money for, when they come in July.
Okay, I'd like to see that at the end of the year, though.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, in your monthly, year-to-date expenditure reports, you'll see all that detail, that you'll see the encumbrances booked in there, so, we'll update that report for you as well.
Okay.
Any other questions on 58? Seeing none, we'll move to 59. Counsel Sani?
Thank you. I know in the past we talked about the enhanced crosswalks, and there's ones that are out there that are falling apart or just not in good condition that they already done. Are they coming back out to fix them?
Yes, I spoke with Marino, they're gonna be out here, I would have them all done hopefully by 4th of July.
So the ones on Main Street, Towson Street, those are all gonna be
Yes.
fixed and no charge?
Correct, that's under warranty.
Okay, great, thank you.
Counsel Mangan?
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Navarro, Jerry, I see you're looking for an extra 25,000 this year. Would you be able to get by with the 75,000, or if not, can you explain what we trying to do a lot more, or would 75, for some reasons we had to cut, and just level fund it the same as last year, would that be sufficient?
No.
Can you just explain, because I'm looking at areas, down the road, like I said, we have to cut certain areas, I'm looking at what's a priority, what's not, and I certainly see, I know we did a lot last year with the 75, and I was looking at, how much more are we gonna be doing that we need an additional $25,000, if you can just explain, or Mr. Viscay or somebody.
We're gonna be experimenting with a new, like, four-way intersection crosswalk, an elevated.
Yeah, there's many crosswalks that need to be done. I think the idea, when we budget 75,000 a year, it's been over the past several years, and then we upped it to 100,000. It's almost a cyclical process, and we're trying to go through the whole city. This number could be $250,000, and we can probably spend it all up. It's just trying to, I understand what you're saying, it's $25,000 more, but we're always trying to make the city better, and unfortunately, a lot of times it costs money, but to cut 25,000 would just mean $25,000 less we'd spend on updating the crosswalk. So, to say, can you cut it? I suppose you can cut the whole thing if you'd like, and we wouldn't do any crosswalks. But the budget as presented is balanced, and we think it's a true reflection of what we need, or what we'd like, and what the mayor would like to see done in the city, and we're hoping that you fund it in full.
All right, Jerry or Mr. Viscay, whoever can answer this question, is there any, I know that, there's a lot of areas that need to be done. Is there any specific areas that you're targeting right now, for instance, that's not done? If you could just explain, what the area may be, or what streets or intersections, for
I
instance?
think we're gonna continue to focus on churches, parks, and schools. But just to put it in perspective, a lot of people, especially in the county, have requested the raised crosswalks. Just one of those costs between $16,000 and $25,000, just to do one of the raised ones. So, just doing the thermoplastic is not that expensive per crosswalk. When you want to start going into the more raised ones, like you see down near 911 or in Somerville, that's a significant expense.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions on page 59? One quick one regarding crosswalks. I know when we had the capital improvement budget talks, we didn't know what the price per, the cost per crosswalk with the brick pattern look ran. Do we know what that is now?
Around 6,000.
About 6,000? Okay. Thank you very much. We'll move to page 60. Any questions on page 60? Council McKinnon. If you could just repeat the question, because the microphone is on.
The Highway Parks Cemetery Superintendent, that was part of that study, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And it seems like some of the figures are like excessive, and then some are not so excessive. How come?
Well, I think, I don't know if I'd say any of them are excessive, but I think that some people were already compensated closer to what the regions around us were compensating, and some people weren't.
Okay.
And that's why you're seeing it kind of all over the
It's
place.
like fluctuating.
Yeah, I mean, right.
Low
Some
end,
people,
high end.
right. Some people's positions were already closer to being in line, and other people, and maybe perhaps people who have been here maybe a longer period of time, were not as close to being in line.
Thank you.
Counsel Simonelli.
Yes, thank you, President, through you to, Director here. I see you're adding, 3 craftsmen's, positions. Am I right? Am I on the right page? I'm on page 60.
No, I see 3.
You're adding 3, craftsmen's positions. 15, they had 0, now you're adding 3 more. 3 more, craftsmen, right? Correct? They're not gonna be cutting down trees, are they?
No.
Huh? What would their job description be?
The same as all the rest of the craftsmen down there would be day-to-day activities.
What do they do?
Requirement CDL license as well.
But what do they generally do every day?
Generally, we're down the cemetery, cutting grass, we're breaking up sidewalks, potholes, cleaning up parks, emptying barrels.
Yeah, well, I'm all for it. I just wanted to know that. As long as they don't cut down trees, we'll be okay. Thank you.
Okay. Jerry, I apologize.
I'm sorry.
And part of the problem is that microphone isn't user-friendly. It's kind of like, got this big bass and everything else. But any other questions on page 60? If there are no questions on 60, we'll move to 61.
Which one's that?
Any questions on page 61? Counsel McKinnon.
The snow and ice overtime, you have it for 50,000, you expended 257,807. If we have a similar year this year, do you think that's an accurate figure?
Well, just to,
You,
Maybe with you.
exactly. Be in
just,
Florida.
just for clarification, the Commonwealth doesn't really allow you to reduce snow and ice deficit, and by law, we're allowed to overspend it once we hit that threshold. So this particular budget, yeah, certainly look at, we spent $3 million to date, and we're asking for $375,000. We actually came off of, I think originally when I started, we were only budgeted $190,000, so we are trying to get closer to true budgeting now, short of last year's, catastrophic winter, in lieu of a lot of the other expenses that are going up. But at this point, we're just level funding this, knowing that we do have the opportunity to overspend that if needed. We hope we don't, but again, it's we can't predict the weather, so this is essentially a level funded budget from fiscal year 15.
Okay. And then that would be the same case with the contracted services, just assume that's not the,
Exactly.
okay, as well as, let's see here.
Just about every expenditure there, to be
Yeah,
honest.
it seems
Police
like
details, et cetera. I mean, we, going forward in 17, 18, 19, I'd like to trend the expenditures on a historical and try to get closer to true budgeting, but it's hard to justify increasing this budget $1 million at the expense of some other department that really actually needs the money to operate. So,
That's
again, it's just a unique type of budget that, one of the few that we're allowed to overexpend if we need it, and as such, we just level funded it at 15's
So
level.
police details will be coming back to us if you need it?
No, that's just how much it costs us in police details in fiscal year. You don't typically need police details when you're doing snow plowing, but we had so much snow removal, we had hired them to do all the removal from the parks and create snow farms, and so, I don't anticipate that we'll need police details in 16, but again, I don't know.
Okay, thank you.
Counsel Napolitano.
Thank you. Okay, I just want to go back to contractual, contracted services. Again, I understand that was all the heavy equipment that was hired to keep the snow moving. And again, I'll say it for the record, I think this year has been the absolute best I've ever seen snow removal in my 58 years here living in Everett. But of that money, this might be off topic, but presumably we get a portion of that money back from the state?
We are meeting with NEMA right now as we speak.
Still in negotiations with
Correct.
those figures?
Correct.
All right, great, then I have no sense asking questions at this point. Thank you.
Councilman Casey.
Just add on to Council Napolitano. Now, is this deficit still an outstanding debt?
Yeah, it's a true deficit right now. We have two things going for us. We do have MEMA reimbursement that we're trying to get to all the expenses. Every expenditure reimbursement that we're allowed, we're gonna cull through and put a package together for FEMA, MEMA. And then the deficit itself, the Department of Revenue has issued an IGR that allows us to amortize that over 3 years, so we'll be able to raise a third, and a third.
Where will that show up in this?
So you'll see let's assume the deficit's 2.1 million. We'll raise $700,000 in 16. We'll raise $700,000 in 17, and we'll raise $700,000 in 18. But I am hoping that as we get close to the end of the fiscal year, that there may be some budgets that have surpluses and try to work that deficit down so that we can have as small a deficit as possible. I mean, I'm not going to find $2 million or anything, but you know, there's certainly some money that may be able to be put against this deficit and try to bring it down as best we could.
So the 700,000, for instance, will show up in the
as like another amount.
Works division.
Well, it's on the recap when we did the 5-year forecast. We call it other finance and uses, or on the recap it's called other amounts to be raised. So we're required by law. We can overspend snow and ice budget, but it's only overspent until the point we certify our tax rate, whereby we have to actually appropriate or raise those monies to cover it. We typically just raise them as part of the tax rate setting process.
So to satisfy our contracts, our contractors, we have paid them obviously.
Oh, they've been paid, and
And
these,
where'd that money come from? That's what I'm saying, did we?
it's just big, our pooled cash. It's not as if when we appropriate $180 million budget, we have $180 million. It's the ins and outs of the money, but in the treasury, we have pooled cash, and so any deficit account is basically paid from our pooled cash, and then from an accounting and auditing standpoint, we have to fix all those deficits so that we comply with the Department of Revenue. But we do have cash on hand. It's not one pool of cash for this account, one pool of cash for that account. We just have a pool of cash, and that's how all our warrants are paid from pooled cash.
All right, thank you.
Councilman McKinnon.
Is that free cash, Mr. Diskey? Is that where it comes from, free cash?
No, it's just the cash on hand from the city. So try to explain it simply. We may have 1,000 line items in this budget, but we probably only have about 50 bank accounts that have all the city's cash in it, and a couple of them are primarily just our operating. So anytime we do a payroll warrant or an accounts payable warrant, that's paid from an account that has pooled cash, and it's, let's say on average we have about $20 million in there, and as taxes come in, it goes into our pooled cash, and as expenditures goes out, it's paid out of our pooled cash.
Okay. And then, let me see, so like MEPA and FEMA, what are we looking to get back from them again?
I mean, I put an estimate of $600,000 on the 5-year forecast. I know that when we did our actual costs, I think we came up with $450,000 that we thought were attributable to that first 48 hours of the first storm. But there are expenditures that will reimburse that come after that with regard to repairs and roof shoveling, et cetera. And that's something that Jerry and I and the fire department went to the Framingham meeting, and they gave us all the detail of what's eligible, what's ineligible, and now the onus is on us to try to cull through and get every repair that would be associated with the first snowstorm. They're only covering the first 48 hours, but a lot of the rules, not to be too wordy, is if you had your roof full of snow, the first snowstorm was the bottom snow, so they'll allow you to recoup the cost of shoveling because you had to get through the second, third, and fourth storms to get to that first storm. So there's a lot of work. There's actually a ton of work in the details of pulling out all the invoices and allocating the right expenses to this, and hopefully getting 75% reimbursement.
Do you have a rough, estimate, maybe, a rough number?
I use 600,000. I hope I'm not held to it, but that's my hope.
Thank you.
Any other questions on page 61? Before we roll to 62, Rich, you mentioned pooled cash, and I know that it's a rolling account. Things are coming in, things are going out. What do we have at this particular point in time, would you say, in pooled cash on hand?
I mean, if I look at our April reconciliation, we might have about $40 million in cash on hand. But a lot of that cash is stabilization account and a lot of funds that you can't get at. But for the most part, our operating funds probably can average around 10 to 20 million. I mean, for example, when we pass the budget, the first warrant of the year, we have to send the retirement board $13 million. We have to, we have to send bond payments of $12 million. So we could have 40 million, it could go down to, but for the most part, the treasurer manages the day-to-day operations, and luckily for us, we have enough cash on hand to handle all of our bills, but in some cases, cities and towns, especially if they don't set a tax rate and they don't have cash coming in, they have to do revenue anticipation notes, which are basically borrowing in lieu of anticipated revenue coming in. We don't have that problem, but we're sitting on a decent amount of cash just because of the reserves we have and the type of business we're in. I mean, we average about $250 million of money in and out every year, just to put it in perspective, so.
Okay, thank you. Page 62, any questions? Council Mangan.
Thank you, Mr. President, through to Mr. Navarro. First of all, you know, all the people that are here tonight underneath you, O'Donnell, Revere, and Ophir, and Millie, like I said, I think you all do a great job. I concur with what Council Napolitano said earlier about the storm here. It was done, tremendous job was done this year. You know, everybody in that, all these different departments and stuff, so I just want to thank you for all the work you do. Just one quick question on the hazardous waste collection. Was $5,000 last year. Well, I know it could be a little bit more this year. So far, it was $1,239, but you're requesting $20,000 next year. Again, it's the same question that I asked a few times. Is this something that's absolutely needed, or I mean, if we were to say put 10,000 in there, is that something you could work with, or is it something that you need this 20,000?
For the most part, the hazardous waste day has always been supplemented by a special revenue account for our recyclable materials, but as we were getting money per ton for our single stream recycling, it's pretty much down to, we don't pay to get rid of single stream recycling. We either get money or we get nothing. We've been getting a lot of nothing lately because of the market. So this is a figure that we budgeted just so that we can continue that program. I mean, how much hazardous waste is brought to a hazardous waste day to get rid of is tough to say for sure, but in talking to Mr. Norton and talking about the funds on hand that we use to supplement that from special revenue account, it's kind of drying up, so we wanted to make sure that we have hazardous household waste day, so we put the money in there. But I think the good news is, for the most part, the entire budget's going down because we have negotiated lower rates for our solid waste disposal, and our collection contract is pretty much level funded. So maybe a little dangerous to cut it, but if it's not spent, we will certainly turn it back.
Thank you.
Any other questions on page 62? Seeing none, I think that's the last for DPW. Thank you, Jerry, appreciate it.
Mr. Chairman, before they go,
Councilor Hanlon.
I have a question. You had asked before if we needed anything from them.
Well,
I'd
yeah,
like-
I was going to wrap up, but yeah, sure, absolutely.
I'd like to
As
see
you
an
think of it-
organizational chart of this whole area.
Okay.
Okay, and then my real question is, you know, we're discussing the buy-off of the city lights, the street lights, and I can't find if you proposed anything in this budget to take care of them. Is it, and did I miss it? Is it anywhere in one of these departments?
Special Service Department. Jim Soper, you want to ask?
What page is that?
Coming up next.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Oh, okay, all right, thank you, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions for Jerry? Thank you very much, Jerry.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Have a good evening.
The next department, I think it's the last department of the evening, is Inspectional Services. Jim, whoever else you want to bring up. While Jim's coming up, I do note on the sheet, it looks like Division of Inspectional Services is turning in $20,000. Is that accurate? Thank you very much. If you could just introduce yourself for the record. We all know you, but if you could introduce yourself, we appreciate it.
Good evening, members of the council and Mr. President. My name is Jim Soper. I'm the Director of Inspectional Services and the Building Commissioner for the City of Everett.
I believe the pages in the book are pages 41 to 44. So we'll start at page 41. Council Mangan.
Thank you, Mr. President. Again, through you and Mr. Soper. Mr. Soper, as I said to Mr. Navarro, I think you and the people working on you do a great job, and I'm actually proud that you work for the city of Everett. So keep up the good work. question I have is field equipment, 6,500, last year budgeted. I know we might be spending more than that, but right now we're up to 2,100. But next year, we're requesting 16,790. Can you just explain that, what you may be purchasing or what you need?
Sure, thank you for that question, Counselor. So in FY16, a new permitting and code enforcement software program is going to be implemented. It's called View Permit. We've already made the purchase and sent significant money, and we're implementing and working with a consultant to get that active. The new software will streamline the application process by allowing applicants to apply for permits online or at kiosks at City Hall, and maybe eventually in your own home, which is or at Home Depot, as I talked to one of the councilors about in the past. The permit approval process will be tracked by software alerting the applicant of the progress. The inspection of ongoing work will be captured and recorded on iPads linked directly to City Hall with real-time updates available to the applicant. In addition, code enforcement software will facilitate the full implementation of Mass General Law 40U, which allows us to fine and go to lien on properties in a much more expedient method than we've done in the past. So with this software, we're going to need some field equipment, and this field equipment includes iPads, either an iPad or a tablet from IBM, which will be connected directly to the cloud, which will communicate to a server. We'll have a complete database that we'll be able to take off the internet. These iPads will also link via a Bluetooth device right to the car. So in the car, there'll be a printer. So when we walk up to a event that needs a ticket, we'll be able to post, as required under Mass General Law 40U, post directly on that property by taking a picture of it. That picture will be imposed on a page. That page will be printed in the printer. That will be folded in an envelope and stuck right on the door. And a photo of that envelope will be taken. So that's all part of the 40U process. So there's a significant amount of hardware that has to be purchased. So we have 6 code enforcement and 3 building officials who will be using this on a day-to-day. So they're going, each vehicle will have a printer, and each of those inspectors will have an iPad as part of this budget for field equipment. In addition, what I'd also like to do, at a cost of $400 per vehicle, is install GPS tracking in every one of our vehicles so that we can understand where our vehicles are and why they're there for any amount of time. This enhances management's ability to understand what's going on. It also gives us documentation as to where people have been, if there's any allegations about what's going on. So I think this is this $400 is a one-time fee. There's a small fee for each vehicle, like $50 a year after that, to keep the software up to date. So virtually we can know where these vehicles are on a minute-by-minute basis. So I think it's very helpful for management and very comforting for maybe the council to know.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Councilman McKinnon, did you have a question?
Through you, Mr. President, just the zero amounts, there's zeroed amounts in 2015, you bring them up to like fire alarm repair maintenance, radio maintenance, signal shop repair, contract services, litigation fees. Litigations is being canceled out, but just if you could explain the increases.
Absolutely. As part of working with the new administrative code that the city has enacted, the superintendent of signals, Luigi, and his assistant, Kenny Della Sola, and a proposed electrician would all move into my department, and they would be managed by the wire inspector, the inspector of wires. Okay, this is required under the administrative code, so that he can make sure what they're doing is done safely, and he can now manage them. What I'm finding is that you could go around in the community right now, and particularly on the corner of Cottage and Clinton, you can look at the pedestrian signals on that, and you could tip those right over with your finger if you wanted to. Mm-hmm. In addition, I saw some on the corner of Bucknam and Bradford. I mean, it's just, they're strapped together. So we're not doing a good job looking to see what needs to be fixed. Okay, waiting to get knocked down by a car, and then we're fixing them. These are situations where I think someone could actually push these over. You know, they wobble pretty bad. So when we bring these three gentlemen into my department, managed by my wire inspector, I would like to have, a short fee, to have a consultant go out and map out all these pedestrian lights, rate their condition, and put them on a schedule to be repaired. And so that might mean coming back next year for more money to repair some of these. I don't know how much of that's gonna be just yet, but we need to get somewhere where we understand how bad they are. And they are bad, you can see them, you'll see them on your street. As part of it, so these numbers really came over from, these three gentlemen were in the budget, actually, two of these gentlemen were in the budget at city services last year. So they're moving into the budget under
So it's just a
ISD.
shift to your department?
There's a shift in my
Okay.
department, and so those funds.
Is there
will
any
be-
increases and stuff like that in pay and all that stuff?
I think there's increases in certain individuals, I think, that were by 2%, and something worked out. And
Okay.
I don't really know much about
So
that.
these are just to start up for the different various things per code?
Yes.
Per the book, okay, thank you.
Counsel DeFlorio.
Chairman, through you. Actually, one of my questions was already answered, that some people moving for city services into your department. I want to know if that was in a salary line item. But the other question is, thank you for bringing the computers in. It took a year, but at least we're gonna be doing it.
It's not done yet, but it will be done soon.
Okay, the other question I have is, who do we call if someone is doing, that we feel someone is doing illegal work on the weekends? If I find that I'm walking up the street and I see someone doing work on their home with no permit, who do we call for that?
Okay, we have people on staff every weekend. They might not be as easy to get in touch with because there's no clerical staff to get their messages. But you make a very good point. Oftentimes, I'm in the office on Friday. I'm listening to the phone ring, okay? We don't have any clerks, but I'm doing my work, and I know people are, and I can hear it, and so I'll grab the guys and we'll get them out there. However, maybe, and you're actually right, we have people on board. Why aren't those people in touch somehow? So maybe there's a way that we can set up, and we're getting a new phone system. There's a way we can set up this phone system so on Saturday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, that staff member can come in and push a button and get the calls. And then take the calls and decide if that's something that's for a wire inspector on Monday, or is that something he can handle today? Okay, new phone system.
Yeah, because I feel that, on a weekend, we, as city councilors, if we see anything, we should be able to call, which we do.
Agree.
We always bother Melissa, and I don't think that's fair. I believe that some department heads are gonna have to start taking some other responsibilities, because it's not fair that I have to call Melissa all the time on everything, or Steve. So, I think we have to spread it around.
We will do that.
Okay,
Great
thank you.
suggestion.
Councilman Casey.
Hi, Ms. Soap. Mrs. Soap, quick question. I see where your big increases are. You had about almost $300,000 in sideways salaries coming towards you.
Yes.
Are you keeping the part-time?
Mike,
and-
Counsel, are you on page 41? I'll
I'm in 3, I'm sorry.
I'll earmark you first, you're first in the queue when we get there. Any other questions on, see, it's not just you, Counsel Hanlon. I'm trying to be fair across the board. All right, any other questions on page 41? Counsel Hanlon.
Is this the spot I was talking about now, the street light?
Sure, we can talk a little bit about that now.
I mean, is it in here?
There is no funding for the street light purchase in this budget right now, but that's something that Melissa is working on right now with National Grid, and that's a capital purchase.
Wasn't too much looking for the purchase, I was looking for the maintenance.
Okay, the maintenance, I don't want to jump the gun, but my suggestion is, and I've seen other towns do this, the maintenance on those are typically consulted out. They have a private contractor under contract to do the repairs on those. They're very high up. There's specific equipment that you need to do it. And just from my experience seeing other communities, they have somebody on call to take care of these issues when they come up.
Okay.
Any other questions on page 41? Seeing none, we'll move to page 42. Any questions on 42? Seeing none, we're on page 43. Counsel Marchese.
I just see with I was looking for the increases in salary, and I know there was a lot of 4 or 5 new positions put underneath you for about $300,000. And even those 4 articles, I believe, Councilman McKinnon talked about, they're about $80,000. That's mostly what I was going to talk about. But it says you're losing 1 position, an administrative assistant. Wait, no, excuse me. A principal clerk.
There's a shift from, that she's a C3 now, she's going to go to an A6. So I believe, and one was zeroed out and one was added in. So we have the net same clerical staff.
Well, thank you. That's, and do you have were you hiring someone for the inspector of gas and plumbing part-time?
No, John Palmer is the continued, he's going to continue in that.
Oh, you just stay there?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Councilman McKinnon.
Through you, Mr. President, Mr. Sopel. Let's see here. Now, we spoke about these positions coming over to you. Which were they again?
Okay, they are assistant electrician,
Yep.
superintendent of signals,
Yep.
and signal maintainer. Now, let me tell you that the assistant electrician is that is a new position. That position is not currently funded under the city services budget. So superintendent of signals and signal maintainer are budgeted personnel, and along with some expenses that they carry with them as they go over for repair items, for traffic lights, for fire alarm signals. Another thing we need to straighten out that I plan to do. You may or may not know this, but most of our fire alarms run underground, under old wire systems, tied into, a lot of them tied into Central Station. The chief and I are planning to remove these pull boxes that are out in the street that aren't used anymore, cap them off properly, and start to move some of these businesses in all the public buildings that we have into a wireless system, in which when you pull that box in a building, you get a wireless call into Central Station. Because we have a lot of problems below ground. We have a lot of water running in these underground tunnels that you can look when it's flooded and you can see water right at the wire level. So we get a lot of false alarms, we get a lot of call-outs. So we need to move this system into a wireless system. So I'm not proposing to do it all at once, but we need to get moving on it and understand what we got ahead of us. So we need some studying on this stuff.
Okay, and let me see. So one of the positions is zeroed to the 61,659. That's the assistant electrician. And is that being moved in from? That's going to be a new.
That's an entirely new position, and that came up because the director of city services called me every day since he started and told me we need another electrician because of the amount of work.
Sure. And then the other 2, they're going to be the ones that are moved in.
Those are the 2 that are being transferred.
All right. And then, let's see here. I see, like, the code offices, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Is that still the case? Is there still 5, or is that narrowed down a little bit?
There'll be 6, 5 code offices and 1 who's the food and milk
Is it
inspector.
currently right now?
We currently have 3 vacancies.
Okay.
Those positions will be filled.
And those will be filled at a larger rate?
That's, actually, those salaries are based on the salary study, and,
They're going up, like $15,000 almost.
some of them, yeah, all of those are based on the salary study, and they're actually, based on years of service, so the ones that are 58,000, I'm sorry, not based on years of service, based on licenses, so the ones that are 58,500 have less certifications than the ones that are at 60,000, so the ones that are 60,000 typically have either, a food serve license, food and milk inspector license, housing inspector's license. They have additional licenses that the people who are at the 58,000 do not have. And those are based.
But still, what it is it's still a huge jump. I
They're
mean,
based, right, and they're based on the salary study that we gave out to you. The same
Okay,
study.
so we let there's 3 vacancies go. And did any one of them have like a weights and measures or something to that effect?
That's correct. Weights and Measures was one of those gentlemen who were let
Okay.
go.
And that's going to be put in from 45 to 60?
That's correct.
That's what the salary study reflects.
Interesting. Then, let's see here. So we will be at some point adding like a big chunk of money to the salary space here from just those right there. Correct?
That's correct.
Based on the salary study, yes.
on that, I'd like to make sure that we get that study from these right here, so
They're
that.
all included in the same
Okay.
study, yep.
But we're gonna request that, like, all that information
Yes, I
coming
have-
again.
I
Just
have
so
it.
that, just so that we can take a look at it, and then if we're gonna do any type of cutting at that point, we'll do it at that,
Understood.
that stage, okay. Let's see. What else? The wire inspector, that's also going up too, a substantial amount.
So, on the issue of the wire inspector, so the wire inspector is now gonna be a management position. He's gonna
Okay.
have 3 people underneath him that he's gonna have to manage.
So that's why that.
Yes,
jump,
he's
okay.
gonna, much more work than just inspecting houses now.
So he'll be inspecting the houses, then he'll be actually managing the people below him
That's
as
right,
well.
managing and supervising and putting a list together and work orders together for these gentlemen to get through, so we know what's getting done, so we get a plan. There's no plan right now, we need a plan.
Okay, so that, he'll sort of be on your, like a management team, but he's a union personnel, right?
No, he's not, he's, employee at will,
Says,
management.
well, it says, A 8-2, right? Is that a, union position?
No, he's on the administrative salary study.
Oh, okay.
Salary chart.
So all the
these
all
As you're
these
seeing
A's
here-
would be, okay.
Yes, those are all non-union.
Got me a little confused there for a
Yeah, the
minute.
A6
You gave me A's, B's,
I apologize. The
C's.
A6 is in the clerical union, our union.
Yeah.
These A's that you're seeing here, no, so the A's that you're seeing at the top of the page,
Mhm.
are not union.
Okay.
The A's you're seeing at the bottom of the page, the admin assistants, and the C's at the bottom of the page are union.
Okay.
Okay.
And then, let's see here, you got the, let's see here, food and milk inspector going from 45.8 to 60,000?
Yep,
Is
same
that-
as the,
same as-
code offices as reflected in the salary study.
Do they do the same, or same type job function, or what are they, give me a little brief description of that?
So the food and milk inspector is designated to do the annual, or sometimes biannual inspections on all the restaurants and all this food service establishments, including canteen trucks, in the city. So that's her primary goal. She doesn't do the day-to-day code enforcement, the trash and
Yeah.
furniture and stuff.
So it's more just of, and she'll go out and she'll check food and milk, and do they do the schools as well?
They do the schools as well, yes. We do
Okay.
the schools on an annual basis.
All right. So we'll have that report from you. Thank you. Thank you.
Council Sachetta.
Yes, I think that my question was answered, but I'll ask it anyway. He mentioned the fact that we have 5 code officers, and now we only have 2. Do we get rid of 3 code enforcement officers, as I heard out in the street?
That's correct. We did,
We did.
yes.
And now you're gonna replace those 3?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Council DeFlorio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you. Melissa, question is more for you. Could I please have a copy of the salary charts?
You want a copy?
Because, yeah, looking at this book, it's really hard to figure out the salaries, because some people are going up salary plus maybe a step. So if I have that chart in front of me, I will understand the book a little bit better.
Yes, we can do that for you, that's not a problem. None of the non-union people are going up steps, so no non-union people get steps at all, yes. Okay, so any non-union person you see, we don't have any step increases.
No, they got boots and increases.
They've
They're
got
going up
increases
boots.
based on the salary study.
I mean-
Union people, if they're in the first 4 years in a position, or however many steps there are in the different jobs, then you may see steps there. So do you wanna see both non-union and union salary charts, or just the non-union salary chart?
No, I want to see the union salary chart.
Okay, so you wanna see all the salary charts?
Yeah,
Okay.
I want to see all of them.
Maureen's on it.
Because sometimes in the book, it looks like someone's getting a 5% raise and somebody else getting a 2% raise.
And lots
So
of
if I see the step, then I know that it's going from a step 5 maybe to a step 6, and that will give me a clearer understanding
That's easy
of
enough.
where everybody is going.
We'll work on those for you.
Now, most of the people in your department, Jim, are non-union, is that correct? Only the
Yes, that's
clerical
correct.
workers?
We have 5 clerks.
Okay. Because I see these salary increases, and I understand we're going by the study, but I see the clerical workers, they've gone nowhere.
Well, so the clerical, we're still negotiating the clerical, union contract. But, and Colleen can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe over the last 6 years, we've seen 13% in 6 years, correct? Yeah, 2% a year for the last 3. So there certainly has been movement. But we are still negotiating currently with Local 25 clerical.
Now, you have one that's a C3U, for example, that's 35,100. Is that the lowest that a clerical worker comes in?
C3 is the lowest clerical.
That's,
C3-1, step 1, would be the lowest clerical. So a newly hired person would be typically a C3, step 1,
okay,
depending on the position they were hired for, but
okay, thank you.
Counsel Del Solo.
The same questions as the other councilors. I'm just baffled here on the code officer, 44,058. I know you did a study, and that's what the other cities have. What is their actually qualifications?
So, as a code officer, what we ask them to do is, there's no licensing that's issued by the state, okay? So, but there are certificates for testing, for basically, it comes down to what's called ServSafe. ServSafe is an organization that holds a class, can be 2 days, can go for a long day, and then you must pass an exam after that. It basically instructs you on how to handle food and how to identify food-borne illness, okay? And it doesn't relate to trash on the street and, you know, a couch and a barrel open, but it gives you the sense that once you pass these tests, once these guys pass, or people pass these exams, that they understand more about what it takes to have a healthy city, and you can understand that they accept their job and they will excel at their job, rather than just being a layabout, and drive around, and don't produce results. We're really looking for people who, and I'm not saying people do that, all right? But what I'm saying is this: if you're working here, you're going to be working, and that's the way that's going to go. And I'm looking for people who want to do better all the time and learn more. And so if you're not looking to learn more, then I think everybody should be looking for the next step up all the time. And this is part of how I evaluate somebody. So we're not given a lot to evaluate in that position, but these are some of the tools that we use. And a whole other different management tools you can use as well, just how someone approaches you and how someone talks to you. And they have empathy and stuff like that. But this is a hard equation. You either pass that exam or you don't pass that exam. You get a good idea of what your qualifications are, because there's a lot more than that. There's a whole set of rules the Board of Health has in the state that you need to know as well to do your job. And so you're either going to throw those in your desk drawer and never look at them, or they're going to be on top of your desk and you're going to be looking at them and studying them. And I need people who are knowledgeable, and the city needs people who are knowledgeable to do their job. So
If they don't pass the test, what happens?
they're not fired, but they're not promoted, and they're not given raises, and they're not given the good duty, and they're not given the overtime, and they're not given the good car, and, you know, it's all the other things that you can do to, you know, make people, you know, work a little harder, and, you know, either you're motivated or you're not in some of these things, and so that's the kind of way I look at it.
I'm just looking at the salary. We do studies to give people a raise that they deserve, the salary the surrounding cities. Do we ever do a study on, I'm just looking at the salary of 58,000, and then I go back to the other pages in the other departments, and we have someone that is making less than that, and a city worker, let's say, that has a backhoe license, hydraulic license, Class 2 license, and his base pay is 49,000. And you have an ISD, and don't get me wrong, I'm not taking nothing away from them, that's making 58,000 his base pay, and they have overtime also, correct?
Right, they do.
They have overtime, the city guys have overtime, and he's making 58,000 base pay, more than someone has a hydraulic license, a Class 2 license, a Class 1 license, that works for the city. I know it's a union thing, and these ISDs are non-union, correct?
Yeah, sometimes the union isn't your best deal. People who excel, I mean, you have to be able to write a letter. You know, most of the letters are set up for you, written the tops and the bottoms of the letters for everybody. But someone's gotta fill in the middle with the code violations and write it in correct English so it can be understood.
Correct.
So, I mean, there's a little bit of that goes on, and you're gonna have to mail a letter, and you're gonna have to track people down, and you're gonna have to make phone calls. It's a little different job, and I understand what you're saying. I was a guy out in the field myself for a long time, and so there's a lot of value in people like that. But sometimes unions hold people down in their pay for that benefit of being in a union.
Okay, thank you.
Counsel Sani.
Thank you. On the code officers, you mentioned that you're gonna be looking for 3 new officers. Are they gonna be Everett residents' first choice?
It has to be,
They have to
yes.
be. And if you don't succeed in Everett, will you then become in front of the council for?
What will happen is that we'll post the positions in Everett newspapers. If we don't get any, I can't imagine this would happen, but if we don't get any qualified Everett residents, then we would come before you with the resumes that we did get to show you that we did not get any qualified Everett residents and apply for a waiver.
Okay. I do agree with Council Del Sola mentioning about how the craftsmen, there's a lot of them that out and using their hands and have certain licenses, and I know you just said that if you're a union, sometimes it's not benefit to them.
Right.
So I do understand what Council Del Sola is saying too, because there's a lot of craftsmen that are really good workers out there that
Right.
are underpaid, so.
Agreed.
Counsel McKinnon.
Through you, Mr. President. I concur with my colleague over here, and, I mean, is this thing a license that they have to go and be tested for?
There is no license prior to getting the job as a code enforcement official in the state of Massachusetts that you have to attain. There's nothing like that.
After?
There is nothing after. And you have, as a building inspector, you have to do it.
Oh, yeah.
So, not to change the subject, so just that you know, coming in the future, we might be looking for a building inspector. We're looking for someone who's passing exams in a building inspector, not wasting our time. On a code enforcement, no, there's no requirement in the state of Massachusetts. You're appointed, and then it's up to your management staff to make sure that those people are excelling in their job.
So on that point, Mr. Sobel,
Yes.
you have a local building inspector going from 65,000, and then you have a code enforcement officer going to 60,000. Now, he has the license and these guys don't.
That's correct. There's 3 exams that at least an assistant building inspector passes.
That's what I'm saying. I mean,
Right.
do you see where we're going with this?
No, I understand. I understand. There's the results of a salary study that we have that says, like communities that surround us, pay these people to do that job. So you look at your pool or your base of who will do that job, and you say, that's the going rate for that person. So I think we need to decide that we need to have good qualified people for that rate of pay. Qualified
I don't
people.
want to sell these code officers short either. They are responsible for implementing the entire 13A of our ordinance book, which is a 20 pages of ordinances, the nuisance law, all of our trash regulations. So I don't want to sell short the job that they're doing either, which I kind of
We're not
think is
doing that.
happening. Yeah.
We're not doing
I
that at
just
all.
wanna- I
What
wanna make
we're
sure-
trying to do a comparison here. It's like a comparison study, like they did a study for our salaries that are based on this book right here. We just want to understand how they're getting to that when a guy has to take three license tests, pass those 3 tests before he can be, ever become a building inspector.
Right. And it's
It doesn't make,
business
to me, it seems this job's a little bit harder.
local building inspectors are I think they're both difficult jobs, but, a
They
local
are,
building
they're both,
inspector, right.
I mean,
difficult jobs, but-
these guys are out there, they're like 24/7. There was a guy on the weekends. Now, we have to figure things out, but what I'm saying is this, is these guys here, like he said, like Mr. Sopel said, local building inspector. 3 times he has to take licensing. 3 times he has to pass. That's before he even gets his job at 65,000. The other one is, there's 1 test, no licensing, just know the codes, get out there.
Right. And
And it's
based on-
60,000.
Right, and we're
It's
basing our
not-
salaries on
it-
data.
That's
that-
what, I know,
Right.
that's why I'm
So-
saying that's very important data that we need to
And I can understand your frustration, and
take a
of
look at
course,
it again.
It's, like I said, the shorter version was given out on Thursday, and you can take a look and see,
Sure.
where those numbers came from. And
I understand where they come from, but I
share
want
your,
a more defined,
that's
definitive
understood.
answer on
And I
that.
share your thoughts on it, and I know it can be a little, disorienting, especially when you don't have everyone's job description in front of you. I
Yeah.
just wanna, I wanna make sure the code officers aren't at home going, but we do this and we do that, and we have training in housing, and we have to do habitability,
Yeah,
and,
that's fine.
so.
I mean, they deal with a whole array of issues.
Yeah,
So,
A lot of
I mean, I know they deal from nuisance, pests, all that stuff, so, I mean, I know what they deal with.
non-easy
Uh,
job.
Yeah, and it's not an easy job, but what I'm saying is, you got that job, hearing what it is, compared to what Mr. Sopel just said, 3 tests before you even get the job, 65,000. It's like you're getting 5,000, extra for taking those 3 tests, being licensed, and then, it just seems a little odd. It seems a little off.
Well, they do work in some bad conditions, and you mentioned the pest. We have
Oh, yeah.
Tyvek suits for all those guys in
You
boots.
have to,
When we get
because
the
they'll be
bug
bringing
calls,
stuff home to their
They've gotta
families.
go, they've gotta take a bug and put it in a jar and examine it and bring it back, take their clothes and
Huh?
make sure they get washed, so it's not
You
an
should
easy-
have clothing allowance, the number 1 thing here, and suits and everything else, but,
It's actually in there, we do it under uniforms and
Okay.
such.
I understand, but what I'm saying is, for us to actually take a look at and do almost like a comparison study ourselves, we have to know what they're out there and what they're against, and then we can look at it and say, yeah, well, it sort of makes sense, So if we can get that information, that would be great. Thank you.
Any other questions on page 43? Counsel Simonelli.
Thank you, Mr. President, through you to the, Mr. Sokol. It's weights and measure inspector. It seems to me, what is his job description?
Well, not only does he do weights and measures, he was also acting as part-time code official too. So that position doesn't just do weights and measures. So half his time, probably 6 months of the year, is code enforcement. The other 6 months of the year is weights and measures. So what weights and measures does is they're a sealer. Under the state Massachusetts law, every community is supposed to have a sealer. And what they do is they make sure that when you go in and get your cold cuts, that scale has been tested with a device, a weight, that's been certified by the state, that sealer has with him, that he puts on that scale and tests it 3 times to make sure that it comes out the same weight every time. Now, not only that, he goes to every gas station, every pump. He takes a prover, it's called a prover. It's a 5-gallon copper container, and 5 gallons of gas goes in there with the meter, and he reads the prover 3 times. So every single meter, those are meters, they get looked at and sealed. In addition to that, all the guns that they shoot, your codes when you go into the store. When you go into a store, there's actually supposed to go into an aisle in a store, pick out 100 items, go to the counter and see if there's any errors. That's all part of his job. Some of the biggest funding comes from the natural gas plant, because those trucks they go on huge scales, in and out, so they know how much natural gas has gone on and off the property. There's fees up to of $3,500 per scale over there that happen on an annual basis, and I think there's 3 scales in their yard. So you got all these guys, junkyards, all the junkyards get weighed out too. It's amazing. Protect the public.
Wow, I didn't think it was that widespread.
Yeah.
But also, are they inspected yearly, once a year?
They're in-
3 times, how do they do the inspection?
It's
How-
only done once a year. and
Everything,
and then they're sealed. So every scale that you see has a device in it which you can wrap wire on it and crimp it and seal it with with the City of Everett's insignia for the year it's been sealed. Now that gentleman who does that job, he needs to be certified to do that job. He needs to pass exams, because you can kind of imagine doing volumes and areas and weights and conversions. They got to be tested that they know how to do that when they get in that situation. So, yeah, that is a job that carries more certification than the local.
That's
code.
great, I just never knew what they really did, and it's great to know that. But they're out there, they work 35 hours like everybody else.
Yeah, well, he can do his job in 6 months. We got it set up on a spreadsheet where he can do his job in 6 months, so then I can put him in code enforcement on the other 6 months.
Like you say, you'll make sure he's working, he's not.
Absolutely.
all the time.
Yeah, no fooling around.
I like that, okay, thank you.
Any other questions on page 43? Seeing none, we'll go to page 44. Any questions on page 44? Jim, thank you very much. And just as far as housekeeping, Jim, you're all set, thank you. housekeeping for Rich and for Melissa, and as I go through this list, councilors, if there's anything I missed, if there's anything you want, please raise it. The first thing I've got on the list is, for any proposed new position, we'd like a list of responsibilities and a list of the qualifications being sought. For the salary study, we need more in-depth information with regard to each of the communities that were incorporated into that survey. Population, the average income, and the annual budget for each community, and broken down by community, in property value. Then the itemized list of vehicles and equipment per department. As far as the repair work that was done, how much of that is done in-house versus being sent out?
For fleet, right?
Yes. An organizational chart for the DPW. And for ISD. If we get an organizational chart for ISD as well. And then I believe there was a request for union and non-union salary chart. Is there any other information that any of the councils would like to have as they're reviewing the budget? Does that cover everything? Very good.
We'll
And
furnish this on Thursday night. That works for
wonderful.
everybody?
Yeah, the sooner the better. That's great. Thank you. Thank you very much for your time. What's the will of the council? It's been moved and seconded to adjourn. All in favor? Opposed? You have adjourned.